Hello guys, welcome to the channel. This is the story about what if Naruto was the Jinchuuriki of 9 Bijuu x Highschool DxD Part 16. Before I start the video, please subscribe the channel for more fanfiction video and please share this video with your friends. This story was written by Havoc Tear. With any more interception, let's start the video. Land of Fire. Hokage Office. The Hokage office is still. Nothing moved within the dark room of the highest authority of the village, hidden in the leaves. The dawning sky had barely begun to light beyond the window and walls, but the tension had never been this high. Kakashi did move. Not because he was calm, not because he believed stillness would save anyone in the room. His instincts told him the truth. He knew with one look from the bead of blood trailing down Karen's pale throat, the steadiness in Kushina's purple eyes, that any sudden movement would get the girl killed before he even reached for a kunai. Outside, the village remained ignorant of the situation, still calm and slumbering. With a calm, even voice, Kushina lost her smile and pressed, "Answer me." Kakashi's gray eyes remained fixed on the blade at Karen's neck, before he offered in a whisper, "Kushina. Answer me, Kakashi." Kushina stated perfectly calmly, face blank. He may have thought that there might have been a slither of grief, a crack, or even a plea, but there wasn't. Only steady, knowing steel. Karen wanted to swallow again, but knew how bad an idea it was from previous experience. Finally, Kakashi exhaled slowly through his nose, trying to calm his already frayed nerves at this situation, before he spoke. "What do you want me to say?" His voice seemed to settle in around the heavy atmosphere, but it was broken when the Uzumaki matriarch smiled again. It wasn't warm and felt more like judgment as she responded. "Oh, that's rich." Trying to still choose the safest words, "Huh, Kakashi?" Despite the fact her eyes narrowed at the end, Kakashi had to try. "Let her go." "No." Kushina cut him off like a hammer, settling down on the room, and both her captive and cage fell silent. After a moment, she began again, a growing edge in the quieter voice. "You do not get to hide behind her now. You do not get to hide behind this office." The edge grew to a fine, cutting edge as she muttered sharply, "And you sure as hell do not get to hide behind that title." Kakashi tried to suppress his own reaction, but he was sure she caught it, as he had nothing to contest her words, and he knew she knew that too. "You knew," Kushina began again, the edge pulled back yet present, "who my son was. You knew what he carried." Kakashi's jaw tightened, she noted but pressed. "You know exactly what this village made him live through." The sharp edge returned full force as she hissed, "And I want to know exactly what you did about it." The silence stretched into uncomfortable. Karen's ruby gaze flicked toward Kakashi repeatedly, wide and desperate. He could not react to that at present. Finally, after some time and maybe something akin to fatigue, Kakashi answered, "Not enough." Nothing changed at that admission. Perhaps it was just a delayed reaction to the truth being stripped of pretense, or validation of what was already known being spoken aloud. It was hard to say. Karen just stared at Kakashi in a growing sense of disbelief. Kushina did not gloat, or even smile, she just searched his face, his eyes, his posture to measure whether he meant it or if this too was just another shield. Eventually, she pressed further. "And when did you figure that out? Before they hunted him? During? Or only now? When the whole world is falling apart and my son is no longer here for you to fail again?" Kakashi took that hit without reaction, even if it hit home. His student always managed to fix things they could not, and they may have taken that for granted. With another exhale, that seemed to age him, he instead stated, "I tried to keep some things from getting worse." Kushina's eyes got colder, expression with it as she countered, "That wasn't the question, Kakashi." "I know. You tried?" Kushina pressed with enough contempt on those two words to curdle the air, chilling it to new levels. She hissed, "My son was starved for family, starved for truth, starved for the bare minimum any child should have had, and your only answer is that you tried?" The silence was painful this time. Karen squeezed her eyes shut for half a second, but Kushina felt it and slowly turned to her head just enough to address her for the first time as she whispered, "And you?" Karen had never been so rigid, afraid, and desperate than right now. Not even when facing Orochimaru. Not even facing the Eight Tails that one time. Not even when she swore Sasuke was about to die during the war. Her ruby-red eyes slid to the side and met with the ancient, motherly fury of the Uzumaki mother in the purple that stared back. "You stand here in this village. In this tower. Beside this Hokage." Kushina began as her gaze raked over her with something colder than anger. Karen felt it. Like a predator assessing its prey, but worse. Way worse. Kushina met her gaze, something that can only be explained as distance in her tone. "Tell me, girl. Did you ever once remember whose blood you carried, while they were turning mine into prey?" Careful." Kushina whispered yet managed to strangle the rest of the terrified Karen's answer anyway. Swallowing again, getting nicked in the kunai that reminded her of her place, Karen tried again, but her voice was even thinner than before. "I did what I had to do, to survive." She trailed off at the end, seeing Kushina's mouth flatten, becoming unreadable as she returned. "Of course you did." "I was trying to stop this." Karen snapped desperately, fear cracking into something defensive as she pleaded. "I was trying to save people. By helping the same machine that broke him." Kushina pressed, cutting her off, and the room fell silent again. Karen looked away immediately. Kakashi's hands remained loosely at his sides. He had heard interrogations before, delivered a fair few of them himself, but this was not that. This was an excavation. Kushina was digging everything rotten up from under the village and forcing them both to stand in it. A distant tremor of an impact rolled through the tower, weather or debris, you couldn't tell, but the dust still shook loose from somewhere above. No one reacted or moved. Looking back at Kakashi, Kushina pressed. "They're still doing it, aren't they?" Kakashi's eyes narrowed a fraction, but it was enough as she stated. "Still making plans, still talking about bloodlines, Jinchuuriki, survivors, and assets." Kushina noticed that his gray eyes flicked to Karen too quickly for most to notice, though the matriarch added. "Still thinking the next Uzumaki body they can put their hands on belongs to them." Karen went pale as a ghost, which was all the confirmation Kushina needed. Her laugh was small and terrible in equal measure. "You learned nothing. The village is collapsing, and whose fault do you think that is?" Kushina interrupted the Hokage, who suddenly had no answer. It was simply because there was no clean answer left. Just layers of failure. All the way down. Then Kushina shifted her grip on her kunai, not enough to cut, but enough to suggest a claim. Karen stiffened as if she could feel the intent in it. Kakashi noticed. His posture shifted by a hair, but it was enough for Kushina, whose eyes flashed, "Don't." Her single word held within it so much killing certainty, that even Kakashi stopped before he had even begun. He knew immediately that she meant it. She would kill Karen before allowing his interference. Karen's voice came out shaken. "Kakashi, quiet." Kushina cut across her sharply, before she turned back to Kakashi and added. "You don't get to decide what happens to Uzumaki anymore." Eyes flicking between the two in his office, Kakashi muttered, "You're taking her." "Yes." Kushina answered what wasn't really a question anyway. He asked carefully, "For what, exactly?" Her gaze did not soften, neither did her voice as Kushina responded. "For something this village no longer has any right to touch." Karen's fear spiked and sharpened, so much so she voiced, "I'm not going anywhere with you." Leaning closer, voice dropped so only she could hear the full force of the decision, Kushina whispered intently, "You don't get to say that, either." Karen recoiled, but the kunai reminded her to remain still. Taking a breath, Kakashi commented, "If you leave with her, this village, the Alliance, will treat it as an abduction." Snorting, Kushina shot back. This village branded children and called it order. It caged power and called it protection. Her eyes bore into his with a silent, predatory yet perfectly controlled rage. "I do not care what this village calls anything. It destroyed its own future, and you dare stand there and call it necessity. Kakashi couldn't admit how hard that hit, because he knew she meant that too. He, nor Konoha, held any authority here. Not with Naruto gone. Not with the moon falling. Not with the weather becoming lethal, or debris falling across the nations. Not with the dead walking back into the Hokage's office to pass sentence. The flicker of chakra, one-handed sign, 2, 3 then 4. It was Kushina. Likely preparing to depart with Karen in tow, but every instinct, every calculation, and every look at Karen's throat told Kakashi the same thing. He would lose and Karen would pay for it. So, he was stuck, standing there in the office of the Hokage and watch as yet another thing slipped behind his ability to save. When you think of Naruto next, Kushina began, drawing gray to meet Violet again. Her voice as low and absolute as she added, "Don't think of the enemy at your walls." Another tremor shook the windows as much as the air from another distant impact. The red in her hair caught the shimmer of light barely breaking through the growing turmoil behind the four walls as Kushina finished. "Think of the boy you left long enough to become one." Then the next moment, the Uzumaki vanished from the office in an almost salt-in-the-wound crimson flash that told Kakashi everything he needed to know, forcing him to stand there motionless for several seconds afterward. The office felt wrong without them in it now. Too quiet, too empty, and way too honest. Eventually, he did move, turning back to the village but not seeing out. His hand came up and covered his face, shoulders sagged beneath the weight no rank, title, or duty could carry for him any longer. Outside, Konohagakure was stirring, preparing, unaware that inside its core, the Hokage remained alone with the truth, and this time, there was no report to bury it beneath. Land of Fire, ruined Uzumaki Mask Storage Temple. Flashing into the ruined temple, Kushina dragged Karen through the torii gate at the entrance of the Uzumaki Annex. Before they stepped onto the shattered steps, the elder redhead threw the younger one against said stairs, hard, getting a cry of pain from the clan traitor, then spoke. "Now, for you. Lady Kushina." A voice called from the side, drew ruby eyes, while the matriarch sighed, then looked to the right and countered. "Samara-chan, you're early." With short, chin-length scarlet hair and more crimson-laced violet eyes that seemed to glimmer in the early dawn sky. This was Samara Uzumaki, a 16-year-old girl and younger sister of the surviving group of 5 Uzumaki. Nodding, Samara reported. "The anticipation has everyone eager, and so the advanced teams are all here." She paused, head tilting innocently to the right. "The first wave too, actually. I saw Lord Gaara and his Rorans arriving just before you got here. With the barrier down, they haven't detected us yet." Kushina's brow quirked, a small smirk as she offered. "Gaara-chan eager to meet his brother, huh? Not surprising." With a nod, before she waved the child away. "Very well, tell your older brother we are on schedule. I have the traitor here and out of the Alliance control." Samara's cheerful disposition faded when her gaze met the rubies of Karen, becoming instantly cold and cutting. She spoke with the same edge. "Oh, I see. He will want her head, Lady Kushina." Kushina looked to the brat too, eyes cold and detached. "I am aware, Samara-chan, however, I won't allow that, yet. I have something else in mind." Looking back to the younger generation, she pressed. "Anything else needing my attention?" Blinking, Samara looked back to their clan head, crimson-laced violet eyes shone with innocence once more, for but a moment, before lighting up fully and nodding, then announced. "Ah yes. Actually, 2 things." Folding her arms, Kushina gestured to continue, all the while Karen suddenly found chains coming from the ground, wrapping around her limbs and neck, then pulling her hard into the ground, constricting movement and breathing alike. She went ignored as Samara reported. "We found 3 Alliance shinobi heading right here as if they knew we were here. Only after we confirmed their destination, did we intercept and bound them. Anko Oni-sama said to and wait for your return." Frowning, Kushina nodded, then listened to the next problem. Samara then explained. "The second one is somewhat unexpected. How so? Well, a whole clan just, kinda, showed up. Samara informed, getting a narrowing of eyes from the oldest Uzumaki present, whose chains dragged the struggling trader from the steps absent-mindedly. Kushina then asked, "Which one?" "Aburame, Lady Kushina. Is their clan leader here?" "Yes." "Then take me to him," Kushina ordered, lifting the barely conscious and breathing Karen up within her chains and beginning to follow the young girl, who turned on the balls of her feet and leads the way around to the back of the masked temple. It only took a minute before the temporary forward base in the courtyard came into view and the beginnings of the evacuation defense force was visible. The ever-energetic Sasama and her friends, talking with Anko, standing over 3 bound, gagged, and blindfolded outsiders. 24 Chunin squads, the entire Hidden Star Village remnant, led by Sumaru himself, all grown up, standing at 5'11", reddish-brown eyes, long straight and smooth black hair that's been braided into a ponytail for convenience. He was the only one in a Jonin vest, thus the leader of the group by default. He looked perpetually annoyed. Kushina though walked towards Sasama and Anko, nodding to Gaara and Tamari, who were settling down the Duststorm Raiders, the rogue Suna shinobi group, and their Roran protectorates. Anko remained silent as Kushina approached, her voice recognizable by these 3 brats, thus Sasama did the talking as she spoke. "My lady, these 3 were heading right here with plans of raiding the temple for information." With a hum, Kushina circled the bound and subdued trio and could easily see that they were likely this generation's Ino Shikacho. Meanwhile, Anko and Sasama were staring at the dangling Karen Uzumaki, limp and restrained by chains coming out of Kushina's back. It was amusing seeing the usually cool and detached, always in control, bitch barely able to even twitch without the chains tightening further. Eventually, Kushina looked from them to the other unknowns, all with shades, long jackets and faces obscured by high collars, but most importantly, not one wore a headband of Konohagakure no Sato. Stepping up to them with a carefree grace, unbothered by her baggage, Kushina approached the 2 at the head, a familiar face actually, and inquired carefully. "It has been a while, Shibi-san." "It has, Kushina-san," Shibi Aburame reported stoically. Like the rest of his clan, his eyes were obscured by dark glasses, his feature a single tassel hanging down from one side. His hair exceptionally spiky, short and black, paired with a mustache. His hands were in his pockets, much like his son standing beside him, of his cream-colored, high-collared jacket and a gourd on his back holding more kakaichu. Folding her arms, ignoring the clanging of her chakra chains moving behind her, Kushina pressed calmly. "Care to explain why you and your?" She glanced over the gathering of men, women, and children, old and young, before she continued. "Entire clan has somehow arrived here." Nodding his head sharply, Shibi reported. "Our monitoring team detected movement here several hours ago, after confirming signatures from list of individuals suspected of non-alliance movements. The Hive had chosen observations." "Observations," nodding once more, Shibi reported. "We, of the Aburame Hive, have noticed a pattern that concerns us and the future we seek." "Is that so? To be blunt, Kushina-san," Shibi stated before glancing to his side, toward his son, not that most noticed with his dark glasses. "If this can happen to someone as responsible as Naruto, your son, how long until others in similar circumstances are called into question and labeled?" The silence was telling. Kushina glanced over them all again, realizing just how bad things had gotten for the most logical, composed, and level-headed to fear being persecuted next. Taking a deep breath, breaking his stoicism briefly, clearly the weight of the decision was not light, Shibi informed calmly. "Thus, we have come with minimal luggage, as many members as we could without alerting authorities, and our clan stores sealed for transport, on a promise." Red eyebrows shot up. Kushina was surprised at such a gamble, on a promise no less, from the logic-coded Aburame. Intrigued, she inquired, "A promise?" Shibi wasn't the one to react, but rather his son. Shino took a single step forward, now level with his father, and drew attention to him as he stated, firmly, "My friend, Naruto Uzumaki, has never once abandoned his friends. I have, and always will, believe in him. Just as my fallen team always has." The three-bound shinobi stiffened at that, never hearing the normally stoic classmate of theirs speak with such emotional intensity and conviction. He was normally so level-headed and calm. By that logic, Shino continued, unbroken. The gathering of so many of his allies in one place led my hypothesis that he is about to do a Naruto, as my fallen team once called his acts of defiance, against even fate itself. There were numerous snorts at the recognition of the terminology. It was certainly fitting. "And so, you came too." Kushina finished, and the boy nodded. She smiled lightly, arms clasped behind her back. "And brought your entire clan, because you believe so strongly in my Sochi?" Shino nodded once, in total confidence, and not reacting to the revelation, unlike the ones stuck on the ground. Humming, Kushina took a few moments before she nodded, satisfied as she swung around back to the ones captured. "Then be ready, Shino-chan, Shibi-san. Time is short." Both father and son nodded, watching as the redhead strolled back to the three-bound shinobi, and, when she nodded to Anko, she moved to their back and pulled off the Nara's mouth gag, and it took a breath before he announced, "We're with Shino on this." Amused, Kushina strolled past the bound Nara before she asked, "Is that so, Nara?" "Naruto is a friend of ours. Honest. I happen to know the Nara, Yamanaka, and Akamichi are loyal to Konoha." Kushina explained calmly, gracefully, gently, and with such a lack of intensity it was almost like the weather. The ground rumbled from another distant impact. None reacted, already accustomed to it. "Naruto is my friend." The Nara repeated, gritting his teeth. He pressed. "My team never once went out after him. Everything I have done since was to try stop any of us from getting involved with the biggest fucking mistake this village dared to make against my precious person." He heaved hard, then bit out. "He was supposed to become our Hokage. I was supposed to be his advisor. Then the fucking bullshit happened and he was branded a threat, defying all logic and his entire fucking history of saving us." Growling, the Nara finished. "The fucking idiots doomed us because some utterly stupid and misinformed civilians made irrational demands with no foundation in reality, and my friend got caught in the crosshairs. Naruto is, and always has been, our friend. I swear." The guy was panting and heaving. His frustration at being so utterly powerless finally boiled over and spilled out in one go. It isn't exactly an everyday occurrence that a member of the Nara clan launches into a monologue for the heck of it. All eyes were on the Uzumaki leader now. Kushina had remained still and blank-faced the entire time, considering options and every syllable of his words and intent. Her glance to her charges, the last of her blood, and their nods, confirmed the authenticity and sealed the deal. After a breath, she waved a hand and the restraints, gags, and blindfolds of the three young ninjas were removed and were allowed up. When their eyes landed on a beautiful, fair-skinned, slender woman with a feminine build, amethyst eyes, and long, straight, vibrant red hair in a high ponytail, all three had their breaths hitch. The name's Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. Kushina introduced herself, single hand on hip, and smirking. Wife of Minato Namikaze and mother of Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Back from death with attitude, kicking ass to gather my Sochi's friends, and deliverer of light to the scattered. Now, who are you three? Shikamaru Nara. Ino Yamanaka. Choji Akamichi. This generation's Ino Shika Cho. Any relations to Ino Ichiei, Shikaku, or Choza? Kushina questioned and they all perked up. Shikamaru informed. Our dads. Nodding, the red head shifted her weight, and the clanking of her chains drew attention to the dangling Karen at her back, held up by chains coming from the woman's back. Then you, Kushina pointed at Ino, who snapped to her as she continued, are the daughter of Izumi, right? Blinking, Ino nodded, curious as to how Naruto's mother knew. And you, Kushina pointed to the Nara now, then finished. are the son of Yoshino, right? You know them then? Shikamaru asked, but it was less a question than a statement. Kushina just shrugged, then moved on. Now that I know who exactly you all are, what do you want to do now? The world's ending, and letting you go would alert the... Can we go with you? Ino pleaded, standing quickly and getting a raised brow from the Uzumaki present. She pressed quickly, thinking of several other innocent people she could save. You're gathering for a reason, right? Just like Shino said, you're about to do a Naruto, right? She's not wrong. Anko commented from behind the trio, surprising all three as they snapped back to her. Beside her stood the former Anbu captain Yugo Izuki, who added, I also noticed they have withheld information from the Alliance. Or we'd likely already be in battle. That is certainly a good possibility. Gaara offered from the side, eyes still shut and gourd of sand at his feet. Looking up from the crate, he added gravely. But, according to our schedule, time is short. They won't make it far. Many nod, checking watches or the sky, as murmuring continued. Team 10 swallowed nervously, but Shikamaru asked. Then just a few people. I swear, we'll be quick. Kushina closed her eyes for several moments, sensing the limited time left and contemplated things for a moment, then stated, You have half an hour. Her eyes opened and regarded the three young shinobi again with cold indifference. Take longer than that, then you stay behind. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. It will not wait. You're here or you're not. It doesn't matter to the rest of us. Team 10 all nodded, understanding. After a moment, Kushina raised a brow, arms folded as she asked. Then, why are you still here? Choji looked to Shikamaru, who glanced back. Ino looked to him too, and then in unison, the three disappeared in a leaf body flicker. They had to get their parents and Sensei's widow, and her daughter out at the minimum. Samara raised a hand, gaining attention as she asked curiously. Lady Kushina, we don't have half an hour left, though. Kushina blinked owlishly, like she hadn't realized, and then shrugged. Not my problem. Earth. Naruto's mindscape, the normal clearing of grass among a forest and family, the clan compound standing tall at the edge, was covered in craters, ash, and simmering blue flames. That was due to the fact that Matabi was venting her frustrations, beating the hell out of Kuroka, and called it training. Perhaps it was a cat thing. In one corner, where Kurama normally sat, Naruto was sitting cross-legged against a tree while Kuno was standing ahead of him and was trying to follow his instruction. With her legs spread as far as her shoulders, breath steady, and hands ahead of her, Kuno focused as her chakra gathered into her lungs. Then her eyes snapped open and a small stream of wind shot out from her mouth, her hands out in front as she focused harder. Naruto watched calmly from the side as she did. Her posture was stiff, chakra leaky and everywhere, and even her tails were stiff as she held the technique. It wasn't bad for 12 hours of training. Half a meter or so. Out of breath, Kuno inhaled deeply and looked to her teacher eagerly, hoping she did good. She lit up when he smirked and nodded, then cheered and let herself pant as that was super hard. After allowing her to catch her breath, Naruto then posed. Think you can do the fire one now? Nodding emphatically, Kuno turned back to the clearing, perfectly focused and ignoring the cries from a certain black cat, then the ground quake from the blue one's fist hitting the ground. Fire. She could feel it in her chest. Guide it. Focus it. Wind. Feel it around her. Pushed it. Narrow it. Guide it. Breathing in through her nose deeply, Kuno felt the fire rise, just a little bit of it, then breathed out a fan of it. Not yet. Her chakra hummed and slowly the fan narrowed. Bit by bit. Just a bit more. The open fan narrowed further and further, but by the time she ran out of breath, it was still at about 30 degrees across and barely half a meter ahead. It was a good, solid effort. Panting and wheezing, Kuno was about to complain when a hand landed on her head, drawing her golden eyes up to the sage, who smiled. Naruto offered calmly. You did great, Kuno-chan. He ruffled her hair and she beamed under the praise and affectionate gesture. Another ground-thundering crack drew Naruto's attention casually over to see Kuroka landing a good 20 or so meters away from the crouched Matabi, whose tails were swaying calmly, from the center of another crater with a devilish smirk. He sighed while absent-mindedly rubbing Kunu's head, the girl absolutely absorbed in the attention he was giving her, unaware his attention was divided at current. This shifted when she felt him stiffen and looking up. Kuno watched as Naruto and Matabi both looked to the side. Following their gaze, she spotted a man stepping into the clearing. He was massive, big muscles, dark skin, and whitish hair. One of Naruto Ni's friends. The one with 8 tails. Naruto then waved. "Yo Gyuki, what's up? We figured you wouldn't actually sleep." Gyuki chuckled as he folded his arms, regarding Matabi, who waved, Kuroka, who looked skittish, and the preening Kyuubi kid, then back to Naruto again. He offered. "Not that it matters. Time to wake up. 20 minutes before go time." Naruto nodded, then looked down at the confused Kuno and smirked. "Ready to show everyone your hard work?" Kuno nodded seriously. "Hi. Naruto Ni. Hold up." Kuroka called, drawing attention as she raised a hand. "How is that possible? If there is only 20 minutes left, then we've been asleep for 3 hours. But it's been like 12 for us." Matabi snickered. Gyuki looked to Naruto and asked, "You didn't tell her?" "Is there any point?" Naruto remarked, brow arched, and after a moment of thought, the 8-tailed Onioshi just shrugged too. It was a moot point regardless. Japan, Kyoto Prefecture. Neutral Shrine. Blue eyes part slow, but certain. A yawned and stretch signaled his return to readiness as a hand is offered. Grabbing the hand, Naruto is pulled to his feet by a smirking red-headed human-form dragon with brilliantly emerald green eyes. "Welcome back to the waking world," Diedrich joked, watching as the blonde, the young Kyuubi, both cats and the Yukiheim were similarly drowsily getting up. So, we have 20 minutes left," Naruto mumbled, before again stretching out, feeling his legs, then shoulders pop, and chakra cycling through his body as he yawned again. "Yeah, about that," Diedrich confirmed with a nod, turning toward the command tent and leading the blonde towards it. The two don't make it far before a bright flash of blue caught the Dragon Emperor's attention, though Naruto ignored it as he knew what it was. As soon as Kuno realized she was awake again, she immediately tried the fire tunnel jutsu she was just training. It was bright, inefficient, and incredibly chakra-intensive for her small frame. However, she managed it with more control and direction than within the mindscape, though only half as far. "How the," Diedrich began, but Naruto cut him off with a drawl. "The Land of Dreams makes an excellent training camp." The Red Dragon Emperor snapped to him, surprise evident, before breaking into a low, appreciative chuckle. Following with a shaking head, Diedrich remarked, "You shinobi, always training, even in your sleep." Naruto had no response to that. It was true, though, he, as a Jinchuuriki, had far more control over his dream state thanks to being a host of a being that doesn't respect the need for the human need for sleep, despite always being asleep himself. Command tent. Passing the numerous armored squads of various yokai species, 4 squads of 6-winged fallen and heavenly angels, Diedrich led Naruto into the temporary headquarters for this impromptu raid and rescue operation. Entering, the sage found all the Bijuu, beside Matabi, Michael, Yasaka, Azazel, Artemis, Shiva, Kateria, Tsukuyomi, and Sasunu gathered around the room, all of which glance up when he entered. Smirking, Kurama called, "How was the training?" This got a few raised brows. Beside Tsukuyomi and Shiva, both had sensed the unusual nature of the supposed rest. Naruto shrugged, then replied, "Kuno hasn't burnt anything down yet, so it was good." He nodded at the end. Kurama chuckled, though Yasaka's eyes flashed dangerously as she stepped forward. "Training, what do you?" With almost comedic timing, another flash of blue light filtered in from the cloth door and drew attention. Kurama coughed to the side, Suspiciously similar to a laugh, Diedrich chuckled as he looked from the concerned mother to his sage friend. The others all looked to Yasaka, who had gone still while sensing everything her daughter was doing right then. "She's got some lungs on her," Naruto reported, all eyes snapping to him as he studied the map of the hidden village Kurama drew out. It had a very basic defensive line formation marked out between the main village and the Uzumaki Mask Temple, with different markers for each faction participating. It's probably for the best. Most these factions were hostile to one another last week, so nothing elaborate or overly complicated can be attempted, not with any degree of precision without the underlying trust required. Naruto then glanced to the blonde Kyuubi, shrine maiden, and added, "Your daughter is talented with fire, and the winds seem to like her too." His face softens as he added, "Probably her carefree nature, she'll be strong." Yasaka nodded, a soft smile of her own before another bloom of blue flame that could only be foxfire caused her to sigh, then rush off to find out what just happened. Snorting, Son Goku remarked, "Real firecracker, huh? You have no idea." Naruto muttered with a light smirk, causing the Bijuu to all snicker or sigh. Azazel shook his head, fighting off the smirk at this clearly irresponsible sage's antic as he offered, "Your trouble, you know that?" Shrugging, Naruto replied, "I prefer the term, unpredictable." Chuckling, Azazel muttered, "I bet you do." Clearing his throat, the Shinto Luna god gained the attention of all as he points to the map, Tsukuyomi informed calmly. "That aside, Naruto, as you can see, we will form a Sanjuhon. 3 layers. The portal remains untouched. It is a basic 3-line defense plan." He watches the sage inspect the map and continued, "You and your Dai Yukai allies are part of the central force while the fallen keep the skies clear, the Yukai on the flanks with the church forces directly behind you." Naruto nods, thus he continued elegantly, "The angels will be on the rear line to render aid to those evacuating, in need of medical aid, or returning due to mana depletion." "Understandable," Naruto reported, then looked to Artemis, who looked like she wanted to add something. She did. "My hunters and myself will be spread across the middle line to render ranged support, or if we need to evacuate any injured." Nodding again, Naruto then asked while looking to Tsukuyomi, "Any contingencies?" "The fallen angels will fill any gap that emerge, should the enemy not have any air support," Tsukuyomi informed, getting a nod from the shinobi. He added, "Heavenly angels too, shall be equipped with extensive barrier protection and can protect any flank that collapses." Naruto nodded, so the Shinto moon deity explained, "We also have the devil contingent in reserve. The Phoenix medical teams are positioned alongside the angels in the rear but can be moved forward if needed. The Agaras has also sent 2 squads of security guards for the portal itself." Everyone was waiting to see what he'd say regarding the devil's inclusion in this list, but he didn't react at all and stared at the map. After a few moments, Naruto nodded then responded thoughtfully, "Best we can do without more intelligence." Everyone nodded, then he added, "Though, I also have a suggestion." Tsukuyomi nodded for him to give it. Just then Matabi, Haku, and Yasaka entered, the Kyuubi dragging her daughter, who was pouting something fierce, inside and sat her down on one of the chairs. Naruto looked to Kurama, a twinkle in his eyes as he asked, "It's been 2 decades, you up for it?" A blood-curdling grin took over the 6'5" orange-haired man with a roguish look to him, and scruffy, half-kempt beard, and vibrant scarlet eyes that seemed to glow in anticipation. Kurama replied, "Kid, that is either the most beautiful send-off or the finest poetic justice I've ever heard." "I take it as a yes then," Naruto remarked with a smirk, getting a rapid nod from the old fox, who then chuckled lowly under his breath. The blonde then moved his piece in the center of the defense line back and replaced it with Kurama's mark. Naruto then explained, "Here's my take on things." Everyone leaned in, ignoring Kuno, who just appeared beside Naruto and gripped his hand. Naruto explained, "Kurama and I are going to be high-priority targets. We always have been. So, we use that to our advantage." Keep the 3 lines but invert them. Invert hone? Invert them. Naruto confirmed for Yasaka, then explained. Kurama can handle it, but he'll need the space. The Alliance will be going all out against him, and we can save on manpower and resources by letting them try. Everyone else just pick off targets of opportunity, flanking maneuvers, and blindside sealing attempts. His hands had moved across the expected battleground as he spoke, looking up at Azazel, then moving across to Shiva, Kateria and Tsukuyomi, and landing on Yasaka. You've turned a hone into a lure. Tsukuyomi muttered, thoughtful. Naruto just smirked, then offered. We're the biggest targets anyway. Might as well be the anchor. If I am reading this right, Artemis began, drawing attention as she studied the map table. You have turned this into a baited kill zone. Naruto just nodded, if that's how they see it. Rubbing his chin, Azazel asked. Sealing attempts, huh, you sure they'll try? The Bijuu all snort. It was so damn obvious they would. Naruto just nodded, then clarified. Part of the reason they chased me down was for my clan's skill in the art. Like 75% of all seals in that world can be traced back to my clan. Brows raised at that, but Yuki added. I would say closer to 80%. If you consider the pilfering of Uzumaki no Sato, after your clan's destruction. They barely understand them. Kurama snipped, glaring at nothing. Naruto nodded, then stated. No doubt that traitor secured her place by reviewing and explaining their functions. You act like only one of you can. Kateria began but paused when the Bijuu all nodded and Yuki explained. The Uzumaki clan specifically specialized in the art of sealing. They were so far ahead, that to others it just seemed like gibberish. It isn't a bloodline or anything, but somehow all Uzumaki just understand seals on an instinctive level. Naruto rolled his eyes as everyone stared at him dubiously, as he then snipped. Way to make us all sound like weirdos. His left eyebrow twitched upon seeing the Bijuu share looks and nods of agreement. The Uzumaki are weirdos. Everyone else just sweat dropped. Kateria though, focused on a single standout detail and questioned. Wait, you said something about a traitor. She almost regretted asking as the moment she mentioned, traitor. Naruto's face darkened faster than even when dealing with those fake Satans. His eyes flashing instantly to gold and with a strange cross within them. He spat out, she dies. He said it with no hesitation or doubt, as if it was already written in the annals of history, verified across all timelines and just waited for reality to adjust accordingly. It was frightening, in all honesty. Clearing her throat, twice, for reasons her own, Kateria offered. Then, you will be splitting from the main force. Taking a breath, squeezing the little hand in his reassuringly, Naruto nodded then looked to Diedrich and asked. You up for some chaos on the wing? With a shrug so casual, you may forget his status as a legendary dragon emperor, the 6'6", compact runner-built man with his long dark crimson hair atop a chiseled, smirking face, Diedrich reported. Always. Naruto nodded, so Tsukuyomi shifted the markers again, moving Diedrich to the side with the sage as a twosome then stated. So airborne forces work with the mindset of roaming cavalry and aerial artillery. This is when the devil representatives arrived, clearly nervous or apprehensive as the room turned to look at them. First in was the young woman known as Sikvaria Agara's, pale greenish blonde hair, and long slit pink eyes behind glasses with a coldness about her presence that made others uncomfortable. Naruto and Yasaka gave her a nod. Ravel Phoenix came in next. The beautiful young teen had dark blue eyes and long blonde hair secured in a practical braid down her back but still could not get rid of the V-shaped fringe that exposed the bridge of her nose. She, like Sikvaria, was donning various pieces of armor with her family crest clearly visible. Lastly, Rias Gremory, wheeled in by her queen Akeno Hamejima. Unashamedly still in their school uniforms despite being among what is essentially a war camp. Just behind them, briefly visible through the flap of fabric, Graphia can be seen standing by the entrance in her maidly glory. Shukaku, of all people, broke the silence. Hey, Why'd you lot come? Matabi slapped the back of his head. The power felt across the tent as a burst of heat, and the tanuki rubbed the area annoyed at his stupid sister's antics. Sikvaria responded anyway, despite the rudeness. We wish to know where we are to perform. Ravel and Rias both nodded with her, so Tsukuyomi nodded back with a hum and gestured to the table. This is the current plan of action. Do hurry as time is short. The devils nod and approach. Naruto then announced to the room. Guess we should all get to positions. Many nods and everyone began to disperse to their units or positions, leaving the devils alone to examine the map unhindered. Naruto. Rias called and the sage in question stopped halfway to the door, glancing back over his shoulder at the redhead. She asked carefully. Can I have a word with you, please? After a moment, Naruto sighed before handing over Kuno to her mother, under her protest, and then turned back fully. He nodded with arms folded, then inquired. What can I do for you, Gremory-san? Taking a breath, Rias then asked blankly, Can I have my legs back? Both blonde brows hit his hairline. Naruto wondered if audacity was a trait of all devils briefly, before he asked. Why would you ask me that? Knowing the answer. Because I want to help. Rias insisted, bordering on a plea. Clearly unconvinced, the blonde sage turned to leave, so she pressed. I know we have a lot to prove. Seek and Ravel agreed with me and are here to prove it. So, please let me help. Why should I? Naruto asked as he stopped before the exit, not facing her or the other three at her side. Even to this day, this girl hadn't even bothered to apologize for anything she did to him. Not the reincarnation attempt. Not setting her kin on him. He owes her nothing. Nodding despite knowing he wasn't looking, Rias explained. This is our chance to show you that we can improve. That your faith in us is not misplaced. That we are trying. Even if that were true, Naruto commented flatly, finally moving his head slightly so his right eye was now visible to them all. We already have two others helping. Your presence is unnecessary. The slits in his blue eyes narrowed to lines as he pressed. What are you truly after? To grow. Rias declared firmly, meeting his lone eye without flinching. She then added with passion. That we of the up-and-coming generation of the new devil faction will change everything. That we are not held back by the darkness of our kind's past. That we are moving forward, always. She bowed in her wheelchair and asked again. So please, let me continue to lead my friends in this fight to help you. The silence was heavy. Both Sikvera and Ravel as staring at Rias blankly, their thoughts their own. Akano just smiled on a way Naruto did not trust. Graphia outside seemed to shift minutely. After a breath, Naruto asked again. What are you truly after, Gremory-san? He could tell she wasn't being truthful with him and there was a lie adjacent or something within that statement. Couldn't tell exactly. Blinking owlishly, she lifted up and looked at his form, his blood crimson hoary with black trimmings and a word on the back the heiress couldn't read. Rias was confused as to what he was talking about. She just explained it, no. Era, Akano began, drawing attention to her as she giggled lightly. It seems he knows your convenient truth isn't the whole truth, Rias. Go on, tell him the other reason. It took a few moments for Rias to realize what it was. Her cheeks flushed red slightly, embarrassed that she may have to actually reveal her hidden identity to other nobility and hid it behind her hands over her face. Naruto did not move. He just stared. Eventually, Rias lets out a heavy breath before finally she spoke. Well, the thing is. Hurry up. Naruto growled, annoyed at this waste of their limited time. Thus, she blurted out. I want to see another world. The silence was brief as Rias added quickly. It's a major event in all my manga. There is a whole genre around isekai. Going to another world. And I can't miss this once in a lifetime chance. But my brother said I can't as my legs are gone in. All this. Naruto began dryly, cutting her as she looked to him. Turning back to her, face incredulous as he finished. Just to see another world? Embarrassed, Rias nodded slowly and he just stared. Deciding it wasn't worth wasting time over, Naruto turned to leave, and just as the cloth door closed behind him, her hopes dashed. He called out, "Saiken, I have a job for you real quick." The last dance moving through the newly established and growing village of tents, medical centers, and barracks around the neutral shrine. Naruto, the Nidaime Six-Path Sage, blood crimson hoary with the words, "Sage," down the back over combat leaf anbu attire, Tonto on his lower back and his two swords on his hip. He passed a group of fallen angels, their spike-lined leather armor being double-checked, their few physical weapons secured and prepared. Naruto nodded to the group of yokai, Nurarihyun and Magari, talking to them, but the elderly house cat nodded to him before looking to the 5'3" young woman, with black hair with a few white highlights, who began to track him too. He ignored them both. The sage strolled by the gathering of devils from both the Phoenix and Agara's houses, looking somewhat out of place and trying not to offend anyone. They watched the blonde stroll by without giving them a time of day, and to be honest, that worked out perfectly fine for them as they finished final checks. Passing by the Greek handmaidens, Naruto gave them a nod and immediately they stood up, checks already complete, and followed after him, Jenny and Felix sliding onto his heels immediately. Just then Artemis and Demeter stepped out from a nearby tent, spotted them, and two followed after. Naruto got the squads of yokai, all standing tall and ready, staffs, spears, and armor polished to a shine. From a squad of Oni, 4 squads of 4 to 6-tailed kitsune, 2 squads of towering Onioshi and the quick and nimble Usagi, and even a group of turtle warriors all saluting as he passed. They have no intentions of failing the sage this day. That was a universal truth they all swore. Finally, Naruto arrived before the bare cedar wood torii gate, the Shimenawa that decorated flowing calmly despite the tension in the air. He met with most his council of friends and family, the Bijuu and Diedrich. Stopping before them, he nodded and they returned it before he offered, "This is it. We're heading back, willingly no less. Should be fun." Shukaku giggled, rubbing his hands in maniacal glee at the thought of causing mass casualties and destruction once more and not getting chewed out for it. Placing a hand on his shoulder, Matabi spoke softly, "We're keeping our word, Naru-kun, as always." Naruto nodded with a small smile. Shomei added, "Most likely, the resistance will be strong, Naruto boy." His eyes gleam in calculated defiance, "But we have always proven to be stronger. Ain't that the truth?" Son Goku chuckled, punching his fist into his palm and grinned sharp as knives. Kakuo nodded with his own matching grin. "They can't stop us once we start rolling." Rolling his pale purple eyes, Gyuki snipped, "Don't get ahead of yourself. I expect any secret weapons will be unveiled, especially from lightning." "That's true," Isobu commented softly, the well-built, tan-skinned, wide-framed man with dull purple, grayish hair with a fringe that covers his right eye and stood about 5'5" tall. His gaze shifted, meeting Naruto's as he added, "They won't have mind control, right? Like Genjutsu." "Nah." Son Goku bellowed, bringing his little brother into a one-armed hug, and added softer, "We got that last brat, remember? Reduced to ash and nothingness." The others nodded and the turtle nodded softly, relieved. Kurama stepped up and presented a fist to his Jinchuuriki, then offered seriously, "This is it, Naruto. The last dance, you ready?" With a breath, Naruto nodded once calmly, then presented his fist and bumped his oldest friend. Both broke into a grin, soft chuckles between them before, like always. Matabi placed hers atop their fists. Shukaku came next. Gyuki, Shomei, Kakuo, Son Goku and Isobu. Diedrich followed, and finally the just-arrived Saiken placed hers down last. They all chuckled with each other, grins upon their faces, before looking to Naruto, who offered, "The last dance, right?" They all nod, so he finished, "Then, let's save them, our precious people." Again nods, before they all stepped back again while Kurama's fist tightened briefly before he stated, We do this like always. Together. Naruto confirmed, and just like that, Kurama vanished in a puff of smoke, but the sensors among the group could see the chakra return to the blonde sage's body. A few moments before Haku and Izuna stepped into the slowly expanding circle, no longer feeling like they were intruding. The flame sage offered first. Always staying here with the kids. Lady Amaterasu promised their safety in the mountain shrine, but she doesn't trust being anywhere else but here. Naruto finished, and to be honest, he wasn't surprised in the slightest. Unlike them, she has no connection or drive to visit the elemental nations, regardless of marrying someone from there or not, and her cubs are her world. An easy choice for her to make. Upon the nod from the fire sage, Naruto looked to Haku, who smiled softly and offered, "I am with you, Naruto-kun. As always." "Didn't doubt it, Haku." Naruto responded softly, as she took up position on his left side and keeping an eye on the approaching black cat, who he then turned to face. "So, Naruto-sensei," Kuroka began, though the fact she dragged it out showed it was purposefully aimed at her aggressors, whoever they may be. The blonde just folded his arms, brow arched, and so, she continued. "Anything we should be aware of in this world? Like, can I still use my senjutsu and stuff?" Blinking at that, Naruto nodded and realized he hadn't briefed them on that. "Well, seeing as how everyone's listening now," he informed. "Yeah, actually it should work better actually." Using Kuroka as a reference, he assumed every yokai had brows arched and so explained. "Unlike here, that world's nature energy isn't wrathful. It's pure and untainted." Pausing, Naruto thought on it a few moments, then added, "You should probably take it easy on the senjutsu actually. It may overload your senses slightly if you take in too much. Go too far, instead of rage, you'll turn to stone permanently." Plenty of the yokai shared looks of concern, Yasaka, Sei, and Hitomi among them. Kuroka swallowed spit, then asked, "Like, forever? "Yeah," Naruto commented offhandedly, then shuddered slightly as if recalling something he had previously forgotten. That only caused the concern to grow as he whispered, "I got lucky, but in combat, luck isn't something to rely on." That was true, and none dared contradict him. After a few moments of silence, Indra, Sarasvati, Sasanu, and Hachiman approached the prepared expeditionary force, drawing eyes as the leader of the Hindu pantheon informed them. "Once the gateway has opened, we shall ensure that none upon this side shall intrude upon it." Naruto nodded his thanks, bowing lightly as he responded, "Thank you for the help. I look forward to hearing about your adventures, young sage." Sarasvati offered calmly, regally, and for some reason the Uzumaki had mixed feelings about that statement. What did she mean by that, exactly? Within his mind, Kurama informed, "Naruto, it's time." Taking a breath to steady himself, Naruto glanced back over the lined-up group. Beside him, Indra and Haku, followed by the other 8 Bijuu. Beyond them stood the Greeks, hunters and goddesses. Then Yasaka and her yokai. Gabriel and Michael with their squads of angels and exorcists. Oh, that's where Zenobia, Irina, and Jordan are. Beyond them stood Azazel and Benamun. Several squads of fallen angels stand with them. Then at the rear, the devil squads, Ravel and Seekvera, and the just arrived, somewhat on shaky legs, Rias Gremory, flanked by her beaming and confident peerage. Saiken does good work, as always. Looking forward, Naruto takes a breath, and as if the universe had decided. Fate had aligned the stars, and the red string bound them through space-time. Mother and son unknowingly spoke in perfect, eerie unison. It's time. Just then, between the 2 points they stood, a sweeping cold of certainty blanketed their respective realms' immediate vicinity. Shimenawa on both sides of the connection faded from neutral white to deathly black as the Torii Gates pulses with the essence of death itself. The space within the bare wooden pillars distorted, reality twirled and mangled, before it seemed to just give way with an inevitable sigh, melting away to reveal what appeared to be a tunnel into true darkness. Breaths hitched, bodies trembled, hearts raced and eyes widened. Naruto, though, just narrowed his eyes and smirked. His blood-red haori flowed in an unnatural breeze once, before falling unnervingly still in the wake of the portal's opening. It took a moment, before the blonde too, a single step that seemed to ring out and snap attentions back on task. His second step solidified hearts. By the third, tasks were recalled and formations remembered. By the fourth step, others joined his, and resolves had hardened. This was a rescue mission. Abruptly, Naruto darted forward at shinobi speeds in a shinobi run. Haku and Izuna remained tied on his side, the Bijuu and dragon a moment later, heading right into the corridor between worlds. This was it. As Kurama said, the final dance. They slipped into the corridor and paid no mind to anything but the path ahead as he whispered, almost to himself, "Hang on everyone, I'm coming." Unbeknownst to the blonde sage, everyone on both ends of the portal heard that and were firmly committed to their course and hearts. After all, Naruto Uzumaki never breaks a promise or ever goes back on his word. Elemental Nations. Land of Fire. Ruined Uzumaki Mask Storage Temple. The shift was felt more than seen. Naruto noticed it immediately as he did not slow down as the light at the end of the tunnel grew closer and closer. Step after step on the unseen ground, but his focused attention was on the shadow within the light ahead for some reason. His eyes widened as the figure came into focus the closer he got. It was a person. 5'4", no, 5-ish. He got closer. Feminine build, red hair. Breath hitching, feet misstepping once before correcting. Naruto realized exactly who that was, and before the first tears could fall, he rushed into her open arms and hugged her right back in time to hear her words. "Sochi. Ka-chan." Naruto murmured into her red hair, allowing himself this moment to relax into his mother's embrace. He is allowed this, right? No one, not one being, dared interrupt this reunion between the returned from death mother and exiled prince, returned to save them from damnation. That was until Armageddon reminded them of its scheduled arrival, a meteor breaking apart in the atmosphere above and peppered the continent they stood, creating upheaval among the tectonic plates below. Breaking from the hug reluctantly, Naruto held his mother by the shoulders and asked, bewildered, tears still on cheeks, "What, how are you here?" With a mischievous smirk that reminded him of his own, Kushina remarked, "Oh, come Sochi. Can't you just accept that your Ka-chan is just that awesome? Did you ever wonder where you got it from?" Not even hesitating, Naruto just nodded in acceptance. That is true. Sweat drops from those nearby, though his mother just nodded too, smug. Abruptly, Naruto drew his tanto and stopped it just before the neck of someone who tried to sneak up on him, its edge at her throat, and his eyes narrowed dangerously. Swallowing nervously, Anko muttered, "Easy there, Gaki. No need to repeat history." After a moment, he withdrew his weapon as he offered calmly, "Glad someone found you in time, Anko. But sneaking around me is still a very bad idea." Smirking, Anko replied, "Safety hasn't dulled your senses then?" "No," Naruto's sharp response. He then looked around and noticed another particular red head that caused his own to flash, but his mother stopped him. Kushina ordered, "Stop, Sochi, this isn't the time for. After what she's done, Ka-chan, she dies." Naruto stated firmly, his eyes locked on the barely conscious ones of Karen, still nothing more than a limp body and secured tightly in his mother's chakra chains. Kushina pressed, "I know that, but for now, she has a use to us. My decision is final." Naruto growled dangerously but eventually stepped back and finally re-sheathed his tanto. "Fine, but her days are numbered." Kushina sighed, but moved on. "We have bigger problems." She guided his gaze beyond the temple grounds, and surely enough Konohagakure seemed to be rousing. Shinobi running about and jutsu already firing at barrier set up, presumably by his mother. The Shinobi Alliance is already on the offense. Nodding, Naruto glanced to his back where the human form Bijuu, Diedrig, Haku and Izuna stood, then smirked. "Alright guys, remember the plan." Shukaku cheered. causing havoc and spilling blood. Fuck yeah. Just remember the formation. Matabi snipped at her younger brother, tail slashing. Son Goku and Diedrich both smirked as they cracked knuckles and rolled shoulders. Kakuo was stretching his arms and legs with full focus. Chomei adjusted his frameless glasses and nodded. Yuki just folded his arms with a nod, along with Isobu. Saiken just smiled back at the blonde. Blinking, Kushina looked at these people then asked, "And you are?" Diedrich's smirk grew predatory. "Friends of the family, here to kick ass, blow shit up, and have fun doing it." Shukaku snorted at the wording but did not deny it either. "Shukaku, is that you?" A new voice drawled and drew attention to the shorter man, red hair, and perpetual bags around his teal eyes. Eyes widened in surprise, before looking to the human form one-tailed Tanuki, who regarded his previous host. Shukaku snarked. "Oh, brat. You're still kicking, I see." "Gaara." Naruto muttered nervously, drawing the former Cage's attention to him, and noticing the hesitation, approached calmly and extended an arm. Gaara offered with a slight smile. "It has been too long, Uzumaki." Carefully, Naruto took the offered arm with his own and clasped it while he responded. "Yeah, but, I'm sorry, about Kankuro and—" "It was not your fault, Uzumaki." Gaara clarified smoothly, interrupting his friend. He added firmer. "He knew what was required of him. We know what would happen. What we were forced to put you through. We do not blame you, nor hold any ill will for you. His sacrifice saved many more and that should be honored." Nodding again, Naruto offered a soft nod, so the redhead stated finally. "My loyalists and I have protected your legacy as best we could." Teal led blue to the side where a bunch of former Suna shinobi stood proud, at least 200 of them, Tamari at the front looking smug, but at their backs. Naruto whispered. "Rorin." The civilians cheered when he identified them, calling out his name like a hero of old and clearly remembering his contribution to saving them in a past long buried by the sands of the land of wind. Nodding, Gaara offered. "Indeed. They have been searching for many years to help you. Now, they're here once more. Following the words of their late queen to trust in you, my friend." Naruto's eyes glisten in remembrance. He got those memories back a long time ago after his father sealed them away to prevent any damage to the timeline, and always wondered what happened to Rorin after he left. How Sarah's went. "They aren't the only ones." Another voice that Naruto knew and froze at hearing. Nervously, he peeked over his shoulder and, yep, there she was. Fair skin that was flawless, an athletic yet curvaceous build and average height. Green emeralds for eyes and Heim-styled waist-length black hair in a ponytail. She's even wearing her form-fitting, village uniform. Gray-colored with a right shoulder guard, gray gloves, and an opening in her shirt revealing some of her impressive cleavage. With a sigh, Naruto remarked, "Shizuka, kinda surprised you're here too." Stepping up to him, flanked with 4 of her fellow Nadeshiko kunoichi, Shizuka smiled warmly at him and offered back. "You don't sound too happy about that, Naruto-kun. After everything we've been through. You say that like we traveled together or something." Naruto remarked dryly, getting a cheeky smile from his mother and a knowing glint in the Nadeshiko's eyes. Shizuka reported. "Well, you did. Beat me, Naruto-kun. The rules of my village are very clear on that." Naruto near enough recoiled, then snapped back with a glare despite his reddened cheeks. "You said you'd fix your village rules, Databeo." Giggling from the 4 kunoichi beside her, Shizuka nodded gracefully, smile still radiant while she responded. "I did. However, this and that can both be true. Besides, I have your mother's approval." She gestured to the smug Kushina, a look of betrayal on his face. Naruto was about to react when the encroaching apocalypse, as if hating being ignored, reminded them of what was going on and a massive earthquake hit, the ground tearing up on the edge of the temple ground. The reunion-filled air evaporated instantly, focus returned, as people barely managed to stay on their feet. Naruto's gaze hardened as he regarded his friends and stated, "We're getting everyone out." Kushina nodded just as seriously, "You have a plan?" Naruto nodded, stepping past his mother and toward the village and ongoing battle, the others falling into step with him. Just as he reached the edge of the temple, he explained, "Yeah, have an anchor draw fire and attention away from the temple." Coming to a stop, the dirt beneath his sandals lifting and drifting sideways, he then added, "Then you all, and my friends hold the lines while I lead the airborne cavalry." "Airborne cavalry?" Anko muttered, wondering if he had gone insane or something. "Where do we fit into this, Naruto-san?" Another new voice, drawing the blonde sage's attention towards the stoicism given form and brought a smile to his face. Naruto whispered, "Shino, you're alive." Shino Aburame nodded once, his father at his side, and offered, "Yes. Like you, I did not allow my team's sacrifice to go to waste. Clan Aburame is at your disposal." They shook hands, but Naruto corrected him, "Not disposal. Allies. I said we are getting everyone out, and I do not intend to be a liar now." Shino nodded, along with his clansmen and woman at his back. It seems that their heir was correct in insisting in this direction. Naruto then jerked a thumb to a teenage-looking man, wearing rimless glasses, short straight lime green hair, deceptively lean but built body, standing at 6'1" and calm. "Stick with Chome there. He'll know how to use your clan's strength best." Shino nodded, then looked to the teenager who stepped up, then smirked dangerously. Chome reported, Kakaichu. Useful." His words seemed to have an instant effect as the Aburame all stiffened instantly, likely something to do with their insect's instincts or something. The blue beetle Bijuu is likely operating on a frequency that reacts to them directly. "Naruto, the rest are almost here," Yuki offered, and Naruto nodded to him before looking to his mother and jerking a thumb to the still open portal. "Also, I brought friends." Everyone looked back at their exit off this world, the portal of absolute darkness, and after a few seconds figures could be made out running towards them. Rushing out first was the auburn-haired preteen-looking goddess, flanked by numerous young teenaged girls that made up her handmaidens. Artemis led the charge out and instantly felt the difference. She, like her hunters, immediately stumbled from the abrupt wind sheer blowing them aside. As they stabilized against it, a few overcorrected due to the uneven gravitational pull and nearly twisted ankles and stumbled hard. Artemis herself looked up and saw this world's moon filling the sky far more than anything she had ever seen before. No wonder. Alongside her, the golden hair, intertwined with various cereal grain with a crown of woven corn and berries, stood Demeter. She was wearing a green dress and dark cape with her golden sword hilt on her hip. She too had noticed the environment destruction and was getting feedback from all over this world. It was horrifying. Next out came Yasaka, leading the combined United Yukai faction platoon, and instantly they all stiffened the second they left the portal's threshold. They could feel the planet shifting and groaning beneath them, sending shudders up their spines with more than a few buckling off to the side, and causing a minor pile-up as they adjusted. The angels of heaven were not much better. The second they left the threshold, their instincts screamed at the wrongness of the planet, and the wind near enough knocked them aside without warning. Most the Exorcist immediately tripped and fell atop each other in the uneven gravity. Spotting this, Azazel prepared and ordered no one to fly just yet, thus wasn't taken by complete surprise by the sudden shifting of hurricane winds. His group managed to help the Exorcists clear the portal entrance to allow the next group a clear run while they get accustomed to it. Then came the devils. Seekvaria came out first and immediately found her feet missing from beneath her. Olivian caught her instantly and slid to a stop before placing her down. The environmental chaos was unexpected. Ravel tripped as the ground shuddered immediately at the threshold, then blasted aside from the unexpected winds, and with several other Phoenix House members was thrown aside. Thankfully, several Duststorm shinobi caught them easily, with Tamari catching Ravel effortlessly and placed her down on her feet. Rias stood no chance. Having just got back her legs, even if temporarily, Her first step into this unknown world, and she almost face-planted were it not for the quick reaction of Kiba. But even he overcorrected. He caught the falling Rias, but ending up losing his footing and landing on his back and sliding to a stop on the stone pathway. The rest of the peerage buckled and tripped aside. Watching this all, Anko snorted. Seriously? Naruto facepalmed hard, as he muttered. "Aw man, that was terrible." Yasaka looked to him, noticing how unbothered he and his allies seemed to be and looked both embarrassed and confused. "Naruto-kun, how are?" Her addressing of the blonde set off numerous raised eyebrows, head snapping left to right, and a very, very smug Kushina growing further so. Kateria, having come through behind Azazel, stares up at the sky and remarked, "The air isn't so much as flowing, it's being pulled." The Governor General nodded, then offered, "This is going to be a nightmare to navigate on the wing." Gabriel looked between them all, then spotted the civilian refugees packed up at the back, safely protected by barriers of some kind. Parents, children, and even a few pets, all protected and shielded from the chaos. Her eyes brightened. Look, they even rescued the pets. The church and her fellow angels all followed her gaze to see the civilians standing together, bags on their backs, children holding pets, and all looking calmly back at them. Michael fell into gear immediately and stood proud, halo brightening as he ordered, "Stay on your feet. Check for injuries and begin guiding them to safety." The angels of heaven moved instantly, Gabriel leading them over to help the locals get to the portal and focusing on stabilizing their immediate surroundings. Artemis approaches Naruto, along with her hunters, now slightly more prepared than before, and spoke. "We are ready for this inverted Sanjuhon Yuan," Lord Tsukuyomi explained in the brief. All the shinobi beside Naruto, Izuna, and Haku, tensed at the name instantly. Exactly as the blonde did, who explained. "He did mention that, yeah. I'll go ahead and set the anchor. Give everyone time to get used to the crazy weather and stuff. Move up behind me." Artemis and Demeter nodded, drawing their weapons as Naruto turned to his mother, Ka-chan. Many ears perked up at that, though both goddesses regarded the woman carefully too. After all, she gave birth to one very powerful sage, and she looks so young too. Naruto continued. "Can you hold the line, and is there anyone I should look out for?" Her cautious gaze flowed from the two goddesses, then to Izuna. It was clear he was a Uchiha and questions regarding that were piling up, but Kushina eventually looked to her Sochi and answered. "Tuchi, Ayame, and your friend Yakumo, they aren't here yet." Naruto nodded, then Enko added, "Oh, and Team 10 was told to be here in half an hour. That was like 20 minutes ago." The blonde raised an eyebrow, curious as to how Team 10 got involved, but nodded in understanding. Looking past the grounds and out at the amassing shinobi of the Alliance, Naruto's gaze became empty with nothing, but action in his chakra flared in a controlled, yet dangerously indirect manner. It was time. The final dance. Lowly, gravely, Naruto ordered. "Spread out in the three-line formation. I'm setting the anchor now." The next moment, he dashed off, Izuna and Haku at his side, leaving his mother and friends to begin setting up their defensive line. The dance appearing near enough in the center of the field separating the Uzumaki Mask Temple and Konohagakure proper, Naruto is flanked by Haku and Izuna. At his back dropped down Diedrich, smirking and confident, who was clearly itching to start flying in this apocalyptic world. The gathering Alliance shinobi stood opposite them and tensed upon their abrupt arrival. Then they recognized the blonde and weapons were drawn, chakra flared, and eyes locked. Before anything could happen, a thunderous thunder of a crash landing rocked the ground, not from a meteor impact or the explosively chaotic weather. An eruption of lightning exploded outward and the dust evaporated instantly and revealed the Raikage, looking serious and already in his lightning armor. Naruto watched impassively as he was soon joined by Kuretsuchi, Meitarumi, and the new guy from Suna. Behind them, coming over the Hokage mountain, several airships loaded with chakra cannons fought against the wind for positioning. "Naruto," I remarked in a grunt, his lightning flickering in the excessive winds. Naruto's gaze only swept over him, if not through him, impassively, and scanned the crowd nonchalantly. He did not need their approval anymore, and released from his duties. They get none of his protection either. Izuna stage whispered. So, these are the weaklings you told me about. No wonder they couldn't catch you. Yeah, well, Naruto replied, then offered. What do you expect of those who let fear and power guide them, Izuna? Eyes flowed to the fair-skinned man with spiky, blue-tinted black hair tied into a ponytail though had bangs parted down the center causing them to frame his face. He donned a high-collared blue shirt, Uchiha crest on his right breast, matching blue trousers, and a utility belt, a sword scarab held within it, that securing them both together. The tension spiked upon realization that this was a Uchiha. Izuna then commented, "These villages, nothing but the gathering of weakness. How disgusting. Watch your tongue, Uchiha," I warned, his lightning screaming in intensity, eyes sharp as any blade, but only got a slow, Uchiha-grade blink in reply. Oh, that just pissed him off. Naruto-san. Mei called next, trying to be diplomatic. Mistakes have been made on both sides. I am sure we can. We are way past that. Haku cut her off frankly, drawing eyes to the slowly turning from black to long snow-white hair, pale skin and large, dark brown-eyed kimono-wearing teenage-looking woman. None recognized her, but she felt cold on sensory perception. And you are? Mei inquired curiously. Haku nodded, then offered. Haku Yuki Momochi, adopted daughter of Zabuza Momochi. A few gasped, the Mizukage's gaze hardened as she responded sharply. No, you are not. Haku died. And reborn. Haku corrected, then called upon her ice mirrors, Senbon, and lifted her infamous mask from her obi belt and placed it on. She did not need to explain anything to those who betrayed her precious husband. A soft chuckle as the ground beneath them rumbled, Kuretsuchi announced. Not bad, Jinchuuriki. You have brought lost clans back from. She paused when Naruto bit his thumb, his chakra exploding outward before he announced among this new, localized storm. History is always repeating itself. The purpose of the Shinobi Alliance was to break the cycle of hatred, not redirect it. Spreading his blooded thumb across his open palm theatrically, Naruto was purposely wasting time as he can sense his allies getting adjusted and into formation at his back. Thus, he stated, the destruction of Shimogakure, the hidden marsh, and Otogakure was regrettable. Going through hand signs, he met the violet gaze of Kuretsuchi directly, then announced, however, my attack on Iwagakure, I regret not finishing it off. Kuretsuchi snarled with as much hatred as she could muster, lava pits erupting and further destabilizing the area before she leapt forward at the rogue Jinchuuriki who dared threaten her home. It was too late. Naruto slammed his hand into the ground as he called, Kachiyose no Jutsu, Kurama no Yoko. The detonation of smoke knocked plenty of the alliance off their feet, and even the three cages had to shield themselves from the sudden force of the summoning. Though, a few paled when the recall what exactly the blonde had summoned. The wind shear ripped away the curtain of chakra smoke immediately, revealing the giant red-orange kitsune, with black fur around his eyes that stretched back to his ears, 9 tails swaying menacingly. His upper body structure resembled that of a human, with opposable clawed hands. Though this time, for some reason, he wore a loose-fitting, black leather biker-like jacket with the kanji for 9 on the back. Atop his head now stood Naruto, Izuna, Haku, and Diedrich, who was staring down at the very clearly bigger form of his pal. He must be at least 400 meters tall, looking at that mounting with the busts from this angle. The asshole never told him he was actually this big. As Kurama lowered down his head slightly, regarding the pathetic humans beneath him, he let out a low chuckle. So, here we are again, Naruto. Naruto glanced over the petrified faces of his former allies turned enemies, and offered nothing for them. This was their choice after all. All the pain and hardships. The loss of so many of his precious people because of their greed and fear. no more. Thus, he announced calmly, "Yeah, here's your round 2. Glancing behind him, Naruto ordered, "Diedrich, you're up next." Chuckling, Diedrich stepped to the edge with a nod. The blonde regarded his fellow sages. "Run wild, but remember time." Both nodded and Naruto leapt off the kitsune's head, right behind Diedrich, who erupted in green energy. Despite the turbulence, Naruto landed elegantly on the now 12-meter tall, 25-long red-scaled dragon that also now had a 40-meter wingspan. As they pulled away from the massive kitsune, he ordered, "Diedrich, we need to get to the eastern forest first, but feel free to knock down those airships along the way." Chuckling as he banks into, then rides the wind up to a higher altitude flawlessly, Diedrich offered, "This, my friend, is going down as my favorite moment ever." He let out a roar that seemed to detonate the chaos further as jutsu began flying, the weather got wilder, and the final dance of the elemental nations began in earnest. Land of Fire. Konohagakure no Sato. 20 years ago, a tragedy hit the hidden village of the Land of Fire. Konohagakure no Sato. It was abrupt. Without warning, the world changed in a single instant. Anbu, shinobi, and civilian alike. None escaped it. Death was merely delayed. Only the presence of both Hokage, the third and fourth, had saved them from what many would later swear was not a fight, as after all. The Nine Tails attack was not a battle, it was a natural disaster with intent. The fox had loomed above, still and watching. Just like now, only now, the sky was dawning, instead of swallowed by night. Not that it mattered. Unlike last time, the Hokage was not here to stand against it. Instead, the Raikage, the Mizukage, and the Tsuchikage stood at the front while staring up at the catastrophe given physical form. Unlike last time, the blonde shinobi did not stand against the beast. Clad in white, he had once been their savior. Now, draped in blood red, he stood with it. Unlike last time, this was not random. This was deliberate. Unlike last time, the beast spoke. With a voice that carried across the battlefield and heard by all. "So, here we are again, Naruto. This is the same thing." The words slipped from somewhere within the Konoha shinobi, hidden among the shinobi alliance lines, barely above a whisper, yet deafening all the same. Like before, it went ignored as the beast did not care, yet, it still listened only as the blonde shinobi answered, "Yeah." A breath before he added, "Here's your round 2. There it was. There it was. What every member of the Konohagakure shinobi forces had feared. An active reenactment of the worst day in their lives, of the village's history. The Chunin and Genin alike froze, gripped by a fear that felt almost abstract, until now. The younger ones had only read of this in books. Of how it took the likes of their previous Hokage to drive it away. Of how survival was never guaranteed. They had skipped over that line. The one most did. You only delay death, not prevent it, and now, they were standing inside it. However, a blooming green tore through the dread-filled silence, with heads snapping towards it. Some, for a fleeting moment, felt the urge to simply give up. For a being, a dragon, 12 meters tall, 25 long, red-scaled with a 40-meter wingspan was suddenly there. It immediately pulled away from the calamity-given form, before letting out a deafening and sky-shuddering roar. Several shinobi across the various shinobi alliance lines found their fingers falling limp, kunai slipping from their grips. For a moment, just a moment, the dread ahead of them dulled, replaced by something far more immediate. That was their mistake. "Move!" I yelled before his afterimage shimmered and vanished, but it was too late as orange flames engulfed the left flank in totality. Screams and ash flown high into the air, yet were muffled by the extreme weather. The ground shattered and exploded up into the chin of the giant fox, Kuretsuchi already moving through another set of hand signs with a gleam in her eyes at her salvation. The large boulder of pure bedrock, reinforced by chakra shatters, and abruptly the Tsuchikage found her velocity abruptly altered by a tail. As the cage of stone rocketed through several bodies and buildings alike, a wave of lava raised high, dense as a tidal wave, and slammed into the leg of the fox. Despite her best efforts, May had to leap clear of another tail slam that promptly splattered her attack in all directions, and her target was unharmed. Several screams as the lava slammed into the Alliance shinobi. Several Chunin and Genin took hits and burnt through as collateral. Doden Doryuheki was called from a large portion of the Iwagakure forces, backed up by a select few Konohagakure shinobi, and a handful of Suna shinobi. Two massive blocks of earth rose up and snapped around the Kyubi, pinning him in place as he snarled. Yoden Sekaigaku no Jutsu. Kuretsuchi and Mei called together, both appearing in the air above the shinobi forces, barely able to reach the chest of the Bijuu. But it was enough as they spat out an arch of liquid quicklime in a spray to help contain the 9 tails until they could. Hyaden Arctic Garden. Haku reported as abruptly from above the Kyubi, enhanced by the uneven atmospheric pressure. An ice-cold breeze rushed for onward and knocked the quicklime clear of the Kyubi and back on the defenders as shards of ice. Kuretsuchi glared at the Yuki, hovering high above and seemingly unbothered, forgot about. A lightning strike, that happened to be the Raikage, dropped from the sky, directly above the pinned Kyubi. I roared just as he approached. Lightning chop. When suddenly he was batted aside by a red, ethereal arm and sent through half the hidden village and into the Hokage mountain. All eyes snapped to the half-formed Sasanu, at its center, arms crossed, and eyes closed. Izuna muttered. Weak. Then suddenly the earth walls, maintained by a large bulk of the deployed Iwagakure forces, exploded outwards and decimated everything nearby, before the roar from the Kyubi paralyzed the battleground briefly once more. With his chakra pumping now, excitement unmanageable, Kurama lets his flames lick his teeth as he grins. Is that the best you have? The next moment his claws shreds the ground and tears up buildings from the foundations, sending people flying in the gale force winds in any which way. Taking a step forward, Kurama unleashed a potent orange flame against another group, trying to use pressure water wave against him. Another group of shinobi tried fireballs and only got a tail slam for the effort. He roared, "Is this the best you have?" Doden Goremu no Jutsu was called, and 10 large rock golems gathered across the ground but barely reached the Kyubi's upper arms. Yoden Goremu no Jutsu. Kuretsuchi called, and a slightly larger, condensed and clearly more powerful variant of the rock golem appeared. A lava golem. A single tail was caught by a rock golem, followed by a second. The third was shattered from the impact. 4 rushed forwards to try tackle the fox's front legs, but Kurama ain't having any of that. His claws tore up the ground as he slashed across them, and they crumbled immediately, only for the Bijuu to introduce his flames to ensure they were ash. Just then, the lava golem struck up, being catapulted from a rising Doden molten core. But just before it reached the lower jaw of the Kyubi, it was tackled by an orange blur. Crashing down and landing in a ditch of this creation, Kuretsuchi realized her golem was topped by an exceedingly small 4-tailed ape that smirked at her. Son Goku grinned. "Oh, fancy meeting you here." Growling, she hissed, "You," but she was interrupted when Son Goku literally ripped off her golem's arm and threw it at a group of Kumo shinobi, scattering and injuring them. Then he grabbed its leg and used it and its creator as a bat to snake around 2 other golems, and then throwing them back into the village proper, via 2 apartment blocks and a warehouse. A loud hiss as another group of Kirigakure shinobi, a large panther 20 meters long and, just as muscular as you would expect, its furred appearance with black striped, azure blue, pale yellow and olive green eyes filled with bloodlust. Matabi. The shinobi fell back, their newest member caught between her claws that sliced clean through fabric, armor, and flesh alike, with flames cauterized the wound as they passed through with minimal resistance. The roar that followed, projected physically in the form of a plume of dark blue incineration with an opinion on their continued existence. Sweden Suijinheki was called, and a barrier of liquid protection raised, but was vaporized before it fully formed and ruptured outward in fright. Those beyond it found no salvation, and eradication was all but assured. Futon. Atsugai was called, yet the two-tailed cat felt nothing, and a glance showed the turtle, armored and unbreakable, its three tails poised before striking out. The triple craters replaced the buildings and scattered the squad of Sanagakure shinobi, 3 critically injured. The rumbling crash and the screams of injured rang out as buildings were uplifted on the wake of the passing of the dolphin horse, gaseous plumes fanning out. Another crash concluded the lives of 5. Kurama's foot lands and immediately, planned, rehearsed, another call. Doden. Molten core. The ground beneath the forward foot dropped down, causing a brief destabilization of the giant fox. That did something none of the shinobi expected. Kurama's chakra was densely packed, which meant they all sensed it being channeled to stabilize, but it was a revelation that terrified them. The Bijuu had learned from his host and now planned to use their own strength as its own. It did not take away from the next part of the rehearsed actions. Doden. Doryuheki. This wall was not as large as the first one, nor as dense, as it snapped down over the lowered leg in an attempt to pin the ankle and restrict movement. It was for naught as the Bijuu simply clenched his trapped hand and yanked it clear, sending chunks of rock and dirt in all directions, intercepting the group of scroll-carrying Sanagakure shinobi, and forced them to abandon their part of the plan. They did not get far as a single, silver arrow punched through their leader. Eyes drew to the auburn-haired, now adult-looking goddess, flanked by numerous young teenaged girls that made up her handmaidens, turned warriors. Artemis declared. Do not trust your aim alone. The sky is lying. Hi. Milady. Then the arrows flew, messy, randomized in the chaotic winds and not accurate enough to be seen as a threat. It was a rouse as they snapped at the last moment into the bodies of their targets, but the experienced Chunin and above managed to deflect the arrows with their kunai. The sky may be deceptive, but the hunter's aim remained true regardless. The shinobi of Alliance did not take this lightly. Chakra flared, aim taken, and before long. Doden. Dongan. Sweden. Tepodama. Futon. Kushuden. Sweden. Suigaden. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. The myriad of elemental jutsu filled with the space between the village and the developing lines of battle. The wind shear ripped apart the fire and water jutsu. The futon vanished in within it too. Those that remained, however, seemed to be completely misaimed and hit nowhere near their aggressors. A call of Kai was made, and perception, that none had even suspected had shifted, snapped back, and suddenly half-animal, half-human beings in armor and shield towed a line between the archers and shinobi. Then their eyes locked onto something else. Another kitsune, slenderer, golden eyes and fur, yet it had 9 tails, standing about 30 meters tall and stood proud at the front of the armored animal-human groups. It was flanked by a smaller one, around 20 meters tall with snow-white fur, brilliant blue eyes, but only 8 tails. Yasaka and Sei in their vulpine forms, enhanced and buffed by the abundant nature energy. The golden kitsune declared. We hold this line. Trust in the sage. Hi. Lady Yasaka. Sky above blue flashes and bolts of chakra filled with destructive intent. The airships bopped and swayed in the chaotic wind, fighting to stay airborne long enough to unleash their anger upon their foe. Said foe flashed through the sky ablaze in blue. The red streak weaved through the winds like it was born there and seemingly floating around the attacks, before a blast of fire was returned. A shimmer of blue, a translucent barrier as the dragon breath collided with the aerial warships, that returned fire with chakra cannons and kunai launchers as the red-armored dragon banked and weaved around the metal shrapnel, a barrel roll and then a blast of fire, then enhanced by winds. The second airship absorbed the hit, before firing back with more vigor. They are persistent, right? Diedrich commented to his rider, then banked hard and pulled up over another explosion. He chuckled lowly. Haven't had much fun in forever. Slipping to the left, evading another explosion, when Naruto, at the base of his neck and sticking to the red scales with chakra, countered with a grin. I bet, but leave that one. He glanced to the lone airship, a bit away from the 6 currently firing at them, that carried only the insignia of the Land of Spring and likely the flagship. That, likely held, her. Just then one of the other airships, carrying the insignia of the Land of Lightning, blocked the duo's view and unloaded another broadside in the direction of Dragon and riding Shinobi. With a growl, Diedrich banked left and found another airship trying to block him in, and he grinned while flapping hard, perfectly timed with the sudden updraft from the hurricane-like winds that allowed him to slash his tail into the ship's hull, the chakra barrier shattering on impact and cleaving a chunk out of it. The airship shuddered as it was pulled briefly by the dragon's tail, then spun as the crew attempted to stabilize it against the wind. Diedrich flew up and over in a loop, Naruto stuck to his back, hanging there for a moment. Just a second everything seemed to slow. The shinobi noticed the transformation of Yasaka and Sei. They looked like children beside Kurama. Then he cleared the top and began to glide, then fold back his wings as he entered a dive right towards the nearest airship that attempted to maneuver out of the clear ramming attack. At the last moment, the Red Dragon Emperor pitched up, then banked left, and his left wing sliced the vertical stabilizer clean off, ignoring the chakra barrier entirely. Unexpectedly, there was a secondary explosion on the rudderless airship, then the blonde shinobi leaping clear off the edge. Naruto glanced back and grinned as he fell. Boom. The entire aft section of the airship detonated in flames, erupting from the midsection explosively and causing the aircraft to break apart in the chaos of nature. With a flash of yellow, Naruto reappeared on the base of Diedrich's neck, the dragon riding another violent updraft, before diving towards the next target while the air around them is lit up by more chakra cannon blasts. The shinobi offered combo attack. With a rumbling chuckle, banking clear of another explosive charge, Diedrich inquired, "You have an idea?" Naruto lifted a hand above his head, the hum of wind collecting, the white glow of his infamous Rasenshuriken telling. The dragon chuckled deep, flames building in his throat. Diedrich lines up on a suitable target. Best destructive attack ever. Perfectly timed, Naruto threw the shuriken of pure wind chakra just as the Red Dragon Emperor's flames left his mouth and sucked them up into its structure. The Rasenshuriken immediately glowed red hot, a barely contained firestorm with nothing but destructive removal on its mind. The scarlet Rasenshuriken slammed into its target midship, clashing with the protective chakra barrier that shuddered and flickered in an attempt to prevent its passing. Below, the dragon rolled by before pulling up on the other side. The draconic enhanced Rasenshuriken had other plans as it destabilized, quickly, suddenly, and without warning. The explosive yield of the destabilized wind chakra, dragon aura attack blasted away the wind, melted the storm clouds, and illuminated the surface of the rapidly encroaching moon. The entire battlefield had to avert their eyes, Kurama included, though the Bijuu had a grin of approval. The airship that had been struck had disappeared in the light of the miniature sun, the others rapidly losing altitude due to the absence of air and oxygen around them, the closest of them suffering from melting skin and components, or overheating spikes. When the light died down, there was no eruption, no sound, just slabs of slag and steel. That was once an airship, falling from the sky atop the forest above the Hokage monument, ablaze and scorching. The dread-filled silence was broken by a bellowing laugh, the Red Dragon Emperor's belly laugh, and a grin that showed of his approval. Diedrich bellowed as he soars with the raging weather. "That, my friend, is my new favorite attack. Yes, glorious." Shaking his head from his place on the dragon's neck, Naruto shook his head in somewhat disbelief as he muttered, "I haven't seen that before. Almost like the magma style but more intense and flashy." The sudden explosion of blue and black flak around them, exploding kunai and chakra cannons, broke the dragon and shinobi from their individual musings. Banking over into a flip, Diedrich let out a pleased roar as his blood was pumping now and the fight was getting real in his mind. These weapons were actually dangerous compared to the mortal humans back home. The metal not so much, but those cannons were denting his scales. This was a fight. This was a war. Flames ignited in his maw again, and Diedrich left out a thundering roar to announce his flames letting loose on the listing airship he has smashed his tail into earlier. Its barrier was down and the flames connected, igniting the metal as he swept over it from above. For good measure, his tail smashed the rudder as he passed. He banked right, around another blue chakra explosion, then jinked left towards another airship going broadside as it tried to regain altitude. The red dragon smirked. This was going to be fun. The airship lit up, chakra cannons switching to rapid-fire direct pulses and forced Diedrich to bank left then right, a horizontal flip, then ducked as his partner, Naruto, let rip another white chakra shuriken directly into their lower aft section as if playing tag. The dragon felt the explosion of wind, but as he banked hard he watched the airship shudder as its barrier struggled to compensate. He went wing over as he reached a rear-to-front striking position, flames igniting again as the barrier flickered on the brink of collapse. However, a sudden heavy chakra blast from the right hit the red dragon and got a pained roar as he broke from his strike line. Another airship rose from the side of the strike, its main forward cannons still bellowing chakra smoke. Naruto tutted. Must be the lightning flagship. Diedrich slips into another updraft, his right chest burned and trailing smoke, having perfected the timing of the flowing and pulled air currents at this point as he responded. Then we know our next target, Naruto. His chuckle was menace-made audio. Honestly, this guy was loving this more and more, Naruto mused. Despite being a battle junkie, hyper-fixated on his arch-rival for countless years. Yes, it does sound familiar. It seems taking on fresh, dangerous enemies that pose an actual threat is pleasing the Red Dragon Emperor immensely. Having gained the required altitude again, the burn from the strike soothed, Diedrich rolls into an attack vector on the lightning airborne flagship with vengeance and flames on his mind. The flagship, however, was not intimidated and unloaded everything it had on the approaching dragon and its blonde rider. Bulk kunai launchers, charged ballista, and its chakra cannons unloading at the encroaching duo. Once more, the Rasen Shuriken forms and Diedrich can feel it through his scales from Naruto's seated position at the base of his neck. His flames already primed and as his partner throws his strike, his flames met it and combined again in perfect harmony. Unfortunately, the main cannon once again fired, punching right through and dissipating the spinning firestorm clean through, and forced the red dragon to flip aside from the chakra beam. Even he, the mighty dragon emperor of domination, felt the power that narrowly brushed past his leg scales. Chuckling, Diedrich roared. Finally, something that bites back. Heavy beams of lightning chakra are shot towards the dragon, unrelenting and turning the sky hostile to its presence. This only got a smile from the dragon as he banks, weaves, and ducks beneath the hail of fire. From his back, Naruto reported curtly, "This is taking too long." "It's fun, no?" Diedrich bellowed a laugh as he rolls again, escaping the chakra blast from the lightning flagship once more, and landing perfectly into an updraft that pulls him far higher than the guns could track. The airships all rock in the abrupt pull of the air currents, fighting against it to stay steady and stable enough for their guns to track their target. Too bad they're geared towards ground combat. At the height of the air current, Diedrich folded back his wings. Red Dragon enters building up along the leading edge of his wings, flown like flames behind him as he roared to declare his intent, and growing increasingly fierce. The lightning flagship seems to hear it. Its cannons begin to glow in intensity briefly, before flickering out, surprisingly. Instead, the light shimmer across became bold and a pronounced blue and presumably hardened. Did not stop the kunai launchers filling the space between them with steel shrapnel. Having already braced himself, Naruto muttered, "Are you sure about this?" "No," Diedrich chuckled lowly, but the excitement was palpable in his low baritone. Before a sudden burst from the chakra cannon again, but the strike ricochet off the energy blanket. "But this will be glorious." Unfortunately, the wind pulled. The lightning flagship yanked up by its prow. The wind shear pushed against the dragon as he flared, boom. Even the wind being pulled by the moon's increasing gravitational authority was halted and overridden from the resultant shockwave at the collision of the two airborne objects. The flagship buckled and flexed from the body slam from the dragon. The red dragon energy clashed against the chakra barrier. Red versus blue. Fury versus control. Domination versus lightning. The draconic aura clung to the chakra barrier like a wave crashing against the shore. Diedrich disengaged, having scraped across the hull the entire length and his destruction of 2 engine pods as he went, then a tail slash only damaging one of the rudders. However, those who got an unobstructed view of the dragon noticed the shinobi was missing. Finishing his hand signs as he landed in the wake of the scarlet energy wave, Naruto slams both hands onto the flagship's metal skin, then declared, "Jishin, electromagnetic murder." A very potent augmented wave of electromagnetic energy rippled from both his hands, rushing across the airship he was standing on. Sparks and arches of lightning shot off from anything metal, magnetizing components, seizing gears, and shorting out batteries. The kunai launchers either exploded or misfired, and locked themselves into unloading their magazines without their gunner's input. The chakra cannons, already delicate machinery, shorted out and bellowed smoke from their barrels. The flagship just stalled and flickered, as if choking and undecided on how to react. The engine seemed to huff, jolt, then cough as if trying to figure something out. The lights surged across the hull in jagged bursts and confusion, as if racing each other to short or explode. There was no explosion. Just stillness. The engines roared again, defiance or duty, none knew, and for that moment everything seemed fine. It almost held. Then everything went dark. Without further ceremony, Lightning's airborne flagship, airborne controller of the Shinobi Alliance, slipped into a stilled silence, and began to fall. Naruto lifted his hands from the skin at that moment, sparks harmlessly dancing between his skin and the hull before he flashed away just as the wind smacked into the side of the uncontrollable airborne vessel, its control linkages jammed. The next moment, there was a flash and the shinobi was back on the Red Dragon, who had watched the impressive show. Diedrich questioned with a hint of amusement. "You put it to sleep, huh?" "Sometimes raw pow." Naruto was cut off when the dragon abruptly rolled, sharp. Another chakra beam fired at them and interrupted the rider from his thoughts. The remaining 4 airships had foregone any type of formation and unloaded their weapons without care or coordination, forcing the dragon to bank and weave rapidly. Diedrich ignored the kunai detonations nearly entirely now, focusing on the chakra blasts that were coming fast and loose, a clear sign that the enemy communications had fallen into disarray. Thankfully, Naruto clapped his hands and muttered, "Futon, chaotic current." The wind in the immediate vicinity of the grew messy and disorganized, just beyond the dragon and redirecting the incoming fire as he held the pose. The dragon darted through the air, chuckling. Diedrich challenged, "Boy, that makes this so much less fun." "But less tedious," Naruto remarked, getting a grunt from the dragon as he spun, then breathing flames upon the enemy airship. Said airship took the hit without concern, then abruptly it took his barrage on the opposite side, a rain of light bolts splattering against the now flickering barriers. Abruptly, 12 black wings slide beside the dragon's head, followed by several other fallen angels falling into formation, riding the air currents. Diedrich offered calmly, "Took you long enough." Azazel chuckled. "Haven't felt this challenged flying since I was a child." The formation of 7, 1 ridden dragon and 6 fallen angels, scattered around the barrage of fire that curved around Diedrich via Naruto's wind barrier. It thinned out during quickly with the arrival of the Gremory forces, forcing the remaining airships to split their attention. There was a lone airship, out of position and out of coordination, and thus being the focus of the attention of the combined forces. Ground Zero, a tailless airship, came crashing down into the southern side of the hidden village, exploding as it crumpled up and the frame distorted, flames rising from the area. Nearby Genin ran over to the scene to attempt rescue and firefighting efforts. Slamming another paw down, Kurama let out a roar as another barrage of fireballs arched up towards his face. A tail swipe, the wind shattering the incoming attack, then he dragged his claw through the ground and building alike. Fire style. Grand Flame Destroyer. Izuna announced softly, before a wave of heat and destruction swept over the battleground, blasting the ground and filling the sky with ash and amber. Suiden. Suiryuden no Jutsu was called by a group of Kirigakure shinobi. 24 water dragons rose and darted towards the blanket of environmentally destructive stretching wave of fire. The clash erupted in steam, blasting apart nearby buildings and wildlife alike. Yet, the fire began pushing back against the multitude of water dragons until, what appeared to be a lightning bolt, struck toward the Uchiha in a thundering crash. Almost lethargically, Izuna glanced to his right and past the red rib cage of his partially formed Sasunu, his Mangekyo Sharingan spinning as he met the black eyes of the Raikage. With a smirk, the Uchiha offered almost cordially, "Not bad, you almost." Cocking his fist back, I thrusted his fist back into the Sasunu, causing spider-webbing cracks to appear, surprising the occupant and owner. This time, the Raikage smirked. "Not the first, ultimate defense. I've pummeled." Izuna was getting sick of this. Even when he fought Naruto, none of his clan's secret arts seemed to be as capable as he recalled or read about. How is everyone always making a fool out of his pride in his blood? The second time I pulled back, the Uchiha dropped the Sasunu and evaded the strike, pulling his sword, flames answering his will, and a line of scarlet flames trailed his sword strike. The Raikage barely dodged it, but powered on, jettisoned forward into the Uchiha. Izuna watched as the lightning wall of a shinobi passed clean through him, then launched a backward slice that cut through his metal arm guard and forced the man to leap back. "By the log, is Kamui useful?" With a grunt, I remarked. "Kamui, you have that too, huh?" The next moment he was on Izuna, hand ready to grip his face, only to meet air and a flame-extended sword coming down on him from the side. The Raikage burst forward and narrowly avoided the slice that cut partway through the mountain on the other side of the village. Izuna commented in a blank monotone. "I grow tired of people constantly looking down on my blood, the mighty Uchiha. And so, I shall take this opportunity to show you its might." Snorting, I pushed his lightning armor to maximum and was about to retort when his communications officer, dropped down beside him and announced, "Lord Raikage, all communications just flatlined." The Raikage looked above the Hokage monument, where their airship fleet had been, and he bore witness to his country's flagship, dark and silent, fall like a brick. With a growl I roared, "What the fuck happened?" His blue lightning briefly flickered back at the tips, before stabilizing again, unnoticed by most. Izuna noticed it and moved forward with a discreet plan. Stated, "The last thing we heard was malfunctions ship-wide and an electrical static before." He breathed in. "Nothing," I snarled, before turning back and pointing to the Uchiha. "I will deal with you later." With a raised eyebrow, Izuna questioned, "I doubt that, boy." Bristling, I was about to snark back when suddenly pulled a kunai and thrusted it towards him. On instinct, the Raikage stepped back and noticed the Sharingan pattern glazed over the top of the normal black, and with a distant look of one of his capable. A genjutsu. A powerful one too. Izuna commented as he turned his back and vanished into the chaos. "Good luck breaking that genjutsu." Inner village, the ground trembled from the crashing of the flaming airship, fire clawing at the sky, and chaos was everywhere as civilians tried to flee to the underground evacuation bunkers. Shikamaru, however, was surprisingly calm as he landed at his sensei's widow apartment and immediately slipped in via the window. As he landed, Kurenai Yuhi snapped around, kunai in hand and baby behind her on the bed. Though, she relaxed upon seeing the spiky ponytail of her late husband's students. Before she could ask, Shikamaru informed, "We're leaving." Nodding, Kurenai responded, "I already have everything packed." She began to pick up the child formula, her spare clothes. "Just need to get to the bunkers and..." "We're not going to the bunkers." Shikamaru cut in, storage scroll already open and sealing away her clothes. Kurenai blinked, looking over to him as he informed further. Shoji should be here in a moment. Ino should be heading to the temple, and I'm here to get you after telling my mother to meet us there. What are you, keeping the king alive? Shikamaru cut the kunoichi off without looking, rolling up the last of the supply scrolls, and then standing, his eyes unyielding when they met Harubi. He added, "There's no time, so I need you too." Shika. Shoji called, landing on the windowsill, drawing all three occupants' eyes to the Akamichi. Seeing this, he added, "Ino, her mother, and the Harunos are already moving. We have to hurry." "The fighting? Closing in?" Shoji confirmed with a nod, then added, "The Kyuubi isn't as terrifying as I heard it was." Just then there was a loud crash, drawing attention to the Hokage monument where pieces of metal erupted up and that red dragon dodged a chakra cannon shot. Kurama let out an earth-shuddering roar and Kurenai tensed, clutching her child to her chest tightly. Shikamaru stepped out first, glancing around at the chaos and the increasingly random attacks. This was going to be tricky. Then inspiration hit him and he voiced, "Let's head around to the Aburame compound. Then from there we can swing through the Nara forest and back toward the temple after that." "What temple?" Kurenai asked as she followed her two escorts onto the roofs, keeping pace with them despite carrying her daughter in arm. Glancing back, Shoji informed, "The Uzumaki temple on the southeast edge of the village." Faltering a moment, recovering reflexively, Kurenai inquired, "Uzumaki temple, since when?" "Since the first shinobi war," Shikamaru commented offhandedly, "at least." Just then, they reach a major cross-junction and find Ino, her mother Izumi, and several Yamanaka clansmen running opposite towards the temple. The next moment, Shikamaru, Shoji, Kurenai and her daughter landed beside them and joined the convoy. "You made it?" Shikamaru asked Ino, who beamed at the baby in Kurenai's arms. The Yamanaka heiress responded after a moment. "Yeah, we decided to head towards Aburame, right?" Shoji inquired and got a nod from his teammate. Ino replied as they leap over another intersection. "Yeah, they're not there anymore, so it should be clear." "Should." Shikamaru agreed, when Shoji asked, "I thought you had gotten the Harunos too?" With a smirk, Ino pulled out a pair of scrolls from her pouch enough to be spotted by her teammates, then announced, "I did. Got a few others in medical and prisoner scrolls, anything to carry things and people along with anything really we might need." "Smart." Shikamaru commented as they reached the besieged area of the village, his gaze sharpening at the outright devastation. Eastern Forest. Isolated residence at the edge of the village, among the larch, red birch, and spruce trees forest the two-story cabin with a front deck that was occupied at present. She was wearing a familiar-looking, but baggy on her open orange and black jacket, her chainmail was visible, black trousers and covered sandals. Her lighter brown eyes were on the skies, tracking a red-winged monster as it flew towards her, but more accurately, the mop of sunshine blonde hair atop it. As the 12-meter-tall, 25-long red-scaled dragon with a 40-meter wingspan passed overhead, the shinobi riding it dropped down and landed with a surprising speed and softness, but before he could stand properly, the hazel-haired woman near enough tackled him. He spun with the impact, chuckling softly, and then placed her down on her feet while clamping her to his chest. With fingers running through her waist length, hazel hair, Naruto whispered, "Sorry I'm late." "Baka." Yakumo whispered, voice muffled by his armored chest and encased by his arms, enjoying his fingers running through her hair. "You didn't write and I thought." "It's a long story." Naruto murmured softly, barely above the wind blowing around them or the sound of the distant battlefield barely registered this far away. She whispered, "I missed you." "I know." He replied softly before falling silent. It was a quiet moment between two old friends, separated for years at this point, and barely able to communicate via summons over the 3 years he was away. Until, of course, he slipped into the other world. A particularly thunderous explosion, shuddering the ground, broke through the warm air of the reunion between the broken duo, both fractured in separate ways but hold together. Naruto then shifted his gaze up to the ongoing air war as one of the remaining airships exploded in its aft engine pod. With a breath, he glanced opposite to see Diedrich coming back around from his brief lap of the village. "I'll tell you about it later, but for now." She glanced up at his smirking face, eyes narrowed as she shoved him and hissed, "Idiot, what are you?" Abruptly the distance between them vanished. Naruto wrapped his arms around her, and she squeaked before they vanished in a yellow flash. A squeak from Yakumo, discovering herself flying just over the forest canopy with the village ablaze beyond it and the smoke pillars wafting onto the sky from it. Her eyes glistened at the sight, before the feelings of warmth jolted her back to their situation and the fact that she was riding a scarlet flying animal. Looking back, her hazel met the blue of her best friend, then down at the fact she was sitting between his legs and held around her abdomen. She blushed hard upon that realization. Yakumo was broken from her trance when the winged beast spoke. "So, partner, where to now?" "Cut through the battleground, Diedrich." Naruto replied thoughtfully. As they reached the village proper, the giant fox causing havoc and drawing attention from everything as planned. He then added as they passed over a Jonin squad firing a fireball at them. "We need to get back to the air fight and back up Azazel's group before they're wiped out." Chuckling as the dragon slipped around another fireball barrage, Diedrich remarked dryly, "Those crows could use the exercise." "Crows? A long story." Naruto answered Yakumo in his arms, though noticed the small group of non-fighting alliance shinobi. Oh, Team 10 was leading a group of Nara, Yamanaka, and Akamichi. Tracing back their path and direction, seems they cut through the. "Diedrich, come about and light up that path." Naruto ordered, and the dragon rode the wind as he pulled up, catching the sloshing air currents being dragged around by the lowering moon like a leaf. The blonde sage felt his best friend tense up in his hold as they crested the turn, but paid more attention to the group with Team 10, all looking up at him and not paying attention to their surroundings. He's seen this tactic plenty of times from Kirigakure's Hunter Corps in particular. Slink in the shadows of people he cared about, even minimally, mingle among the group and hope to let down his guard. Naruto snarled. "You sense them, right, Diedrich? The hidden ones." "Now that you mention it," Diedrich muttered as they swooped down towards the fleeing shinobi group. "I hadn't noticed until now." Flames gathered briefly in his mouth, but instead of a roar, a burst of red dragon energy shot out and narrowly passed by the dread-filled Team 10 and impacted the building 2 rows back. As the shadows scattered, the dragon barrage erupted and blew apart the district with little care for collateral damage. Banking over the fleeing group, Diedrich returned to his heading towards the masked temple just as Chome was spotted with a squad of 6 Aburame had arrived to escort the Team 10 members. Dance of blizzard and mist, a barrage of lava balls shattered yet another ice mirror and forced Haku back into the open, her speed unavoidable, and Mei barely had time to adjust her body to avoid the needles of ice or the follow-up kick. She blocked the strike with a forearm, rattling the bones within, but lashed out with an uppercut to the limb. Haku pulled her foot back and slid upon the conjured ice beneath her feet and unleashed another barrage of super-chilled water at the Mizukage. With a stamp of her foot, Mei called forth a lava sprout that erupted between the reborn Yuki and herself, managing to cancel both jutsu out in an eruption of more mist and fog. The cage had already moved, going through hand signs when she called, "Yoten, acidic mud." A hyper-corrosive substance shot from her mouth and instantly cut through both the solidified wall and the frost-covered ground her opponent was seemingly skating on for increased movement speed. She spread it around, about halfway when the cage had to stop and jump clear from spikes of ice that slammed down with the force of meteor impacts from above. They promptly shattered and sent shards of ice blasting in all directions. With pure chakra control, Mei lifted her hands and the earth at her feet shot up to take the impact, shielding her. The next moment, she went through another set of hand signs, only to be interrupted and forced to leap back when a massive water dragon of some kind slammed down to try and cleave her in a bite. I had this under control. Haku spoke softly, muffled by her mask and clearly unimpressed. A new voice answered. Of that I have no doubt, however time is not on our side. The explosive force from another attack from the rampaging Kyuubi blew part of the mist away, revealing a second woman floating beside the flying Yuki. A tall bespectacled woman with a figure that made even Mei a bit self-conscious, tanned skin, long brown hair in a bun and violet eyes that held nothing but dismissive disdain for humanity. Her low-cut dress offered nothing for modesty or protection, barely covering generous portions of her breasts or legs. She had a polearm of some kind, looked more ornamental than anything, but she had strange bat-like wings coming out of her back that drew the eye of the Mizukage. Still, the unidentified woman continued, unbothered. I believe that Naruto Dono would appreciate my intuitive approach in supporting you in this endeavor. Raising her staff, glowing circles filled the area behind her and several large creatures, not quite dragons but maybe snakes, of water erupted from them and charging towards the shinobi down below. Mei huffed, going through more hand signs and called out, Yoden, eruption. All around her 6 geysers of lava exploded up through the ground, collected above her to form a large dome of liquid rock before she added, Yoden, volcanic destruction. The lava exploded towards the multiple snakes of water and instantly evaporated the first 4 with minimal cooling, turning the leading edge into solidified and dense bedrock. Hyaden. Arctic Garden. Haku called out and an abrupt ice storm surged out from her form and froze the water serpents that then crashed into the counterattack of the Mizukage, forcing a violent eruption of steam and ash. Sweden. Tepodama. Futon. Kushuden. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. From the flank came reinforcements for the Mizukage, jutsu firing off continuously and drew attention, as the wind jutsu began feeding the fire ones. However, this caused them to burn hotter and cancel out the water jutsu's power, due to the chaotic nature of the attacks. Kateria Leviathan moved quickly, staff spinning as magic circles erupted behind her and once more a single large, 4-meter-wide serpent of water shot forward at the incoming attacks. She then spun her staff once more, leaving it horizontal and seemed to guide the magical construct to block the attacks. In truth, she was gauging the strength of these humans and comparing them to Naruto Dono. See at what level his dismissal of them all was at to remain above that point for her future career working with him. Haku was not idle, already reappeared beside the Mizukage, engaging in a taijutsu bout in speeds no normal shinobi could comprehend. Mei raised a guard. She slipped around it with a back heel strike. The cage leapt back for space. She was already on her the next moment. Admittedly, the Yukiheim was venting some of her frustrations and anger at these people for hurting her husband. A husband that, for 3 years, had held on to her very own words and Nindo, despite everyone and everything turning against him. Naruto followed her words, took them to heart, and held them dear, got strong enough to protect his precious people. Only for those same people to turn on him for getting strong enough to protect them. That though only pissed Haku off even more than she was before, landing a slide kick on Mizukage's neck, staggering the auburn-haired cage and left her open to the punch to her lower back, then upper thigh, then a face slam into the tundra dirt at her feet. Mei was dazed and clearly suffering from a concussion. She couldn't feel anything below her waist and her vision was swimming. The ground her hands were gripping, trying to push herself up, was cold to the touch and scorching her hands at the same time. When her glazed-over emerald eyes met the porcelain mask of the supposed reborn Yuki, her chest tightened when behind it she spotted the 3 and 6 tails approaching. Smaller, but unmistakable. Dread coiled around her heart as she tried to get a hold of her chakra, only for Haku to step forward, her voice muffled as she spoke. Consider yourself lucky, Mizukage. You won't feel anything anymore. Before Mei could even gather thoughts or understanding, she barely registered pricks on her neck and then. Nothing. Land of Fire. Ruined Uzumaki Mask Storage Temple. Diedrich landed surprisingly elegantly before letting Naruto and Yakumo off his neck to enter the evacuation zone. The ruined temple was far less crowded, but busier than before with traffic moving smoothly and without hurry. Approaching the entrance, Naruto was met by his mother, who was in full commander mode as she turned to him, doting mode activated on sight as Kushina chirped, "Sochi." He couldn't help but break into a silly grin. Naruto replied with matching energy, "Ka-chan." They embraced despite the explosion and high-pitched cackle of a certain one-tailed Bijuu in the distance. Parting, Naruto gestured to his side. "As you can see, I brought my best friend Yakumo from the east side." The young woman bowed politely to the mother of her best friend, now that it's been verified, though Kushina looked somewhat smug at the change in attitude while she replied, "Good. I sent Anko and Shizuka to help escort Shizune here. They should be back soon." Naruto nodded, then asked, "Then, next up is the Ichirakus and Matabi was sent their way." Kushina cut in, informing her son, who paused then nodded in acceptance. Naruto reported, "We spotted Team 10 heading this way too. They'll be here any." Naruto cut him off, drawing his and mother's attention to the source. Ino had been the one to shout, her family at her back and Shikamaru already scanning the crowd and the portal off-world. Yet, Choji spoke next as they reached them. "You saved us back there, man. Thought for a second you were attacking us." D-Drake behind them all snorted, "Brat, don't take us so lightly." The new group all jolted in shock, jumping out of their skin in surprise, getting the mother-son pair to snicker in amusement at the reaction to the dragon talking. Before Shikamaru could speak, another explosion drew attention up to the airships hanging above the Hokage monument. One of them had taken a pretty bad hit, but the fallen angels looked like they're having trouble finishing it off. Tutting, Naruto turned back to his mother. "Ka-chan, we gotta go or those guys won't make it." "Agreed." Kushina responded sharply, then looked to the Red Dragon Emperor and added, "Please take care of my Sochi, Dragon-san." Snorting, Diedrich remarked, "Oh please, this will be fun," and another line in our growing legend. Chuckling with a shake of his head, Naruto went to remount his partner when his sleeve was caught. Glancing back, his blues met light brown. Yakumo whispered, "You'll come back this time, right?" Nodding with a smirk, Naruto stated, "I'm not alone this time, Yakumo. I'll be back, promise." After a brief stare down, Yakumo let go of his Haori's sleeve and nodded, allowing him to step away. As the dragon left once more, Kushina stepped up to the former heiress with a grin that told of mischief as she chirped, "So, daughter-in-law." Yakumo's face abruptly took on a shade of red that matched the Uzumaki's hair, as she jolted back then snapped her head to the mother of her best friend, "Only a best friend," before she hissed, "He is my best friend." A pause, then insisted, "My only friend," before she glared at Kurenai, who looked away in shame. Sensing the tension suddenly spike, Kushina hummed then gestured toward the portal. "Then, best friend of my Sochi." It was clear by her tone she did not believe it at all, but will go along with it for now and everyone knew it. Land of Fire. Konohagakure no Sato. Look out. But it was too late as the building shattered in explosive steam as Kakuo ran through it and the nearby shinobi were forced to escape the rapidly expanding cloud of dust and gas. The Five Tails did not stop as he powered through wall after wall, jutsu after jutsu, and just kept running through the hidden village and dragging a fair number of Iwagakure and Kumogakure shinobi with him on this distraction campaign. This allowed Matabi, flanked by the two hunters of Artemis, Felix and Jenny, to land beside the infamous ramen shop unimpeded. Back in her human form, the shorter 5'5" woman with vibrant blue, shoulder-length hair, and two blue tails, with a type of pattern in black swaying at her back. She too was wearing Enbu armor similar to Naruto's, a replica. She totally didn't steal it, and calmly knocked on the rear door of the establishment. Felix kept her eyes on the rooftops, bow unstrung but ready. These humans were far more powerful than any she had previously come across and she respected that, but after the training and weighted bands, she felt capable of dealing with them. Jenny was observing the chaos and destruction with a frown. So much death and chaos, all in an attempt to chain a being of nature. Sure, she and her fellow hunters had prejudged the sage and were punished for it, learnt from it, but these people cared not for the order of things. Nature is not something to be taken, hoarded, nor subjugated by mankind. Her fingers tightened around the polished wood of her bow. Jenny muttered, "This is wrong. Everything about this is just. It's why we left." Matabi explained calmly, arms folded, and glanced back at the younger hunter with a flat expression. When Jenny looked to her, she added, "For thousands of years, these humans had taken my siblings and I for granted. Then, tried to control us in their wars." Her mismatched eyes narrowed in hatred as she muttered, "The same thing they're trying with my Naruto-kun now. It is why we fight. It is why we stand with him now." "How pitiful," Felix remarked, watching as the giant fox deflects another barrage of fireballs without flinching. Just then the door opens and a head of brown hair poked out, black eyes filled with suspicion at the three ladies. Matabi nodded to her and asked, "You're Ayame Ichiraku, yes?" "Yes." Ayame confirmed, getting a smile from the Bijuu. Matabi offered, "My name is Matabi. A friend of Naruto's. This is Jenny and Felix." She gestured to the two hunters, who gave curt nods that were returned, and the two tails explained, "Lady Kushina sent us to get you and your father to the temple." Ayame's eyes widened and nodded, pulling the door open properly. "Ah, right. Then is Naruto-kun here too?" Matabi smirked and nodded. "He is. Last I saw he was battling those airships over the Hokage mountain." As Ayame stepped out, the Bijuu led her gaze to the massive airships struggling against the chaotic winds and the crashed one on the mountain's edge. Felix then chimed in. "The red dragon he is riding swept over the village not long ago. It looked like he had returned to the temple. Which means he's probably heading here next." Matabi realized, just as Tuchi Ichiraku stepped out with a large bag on his back, pots and pans hanging off the luggage. Ayame returned just inside the door where a smaller bag, no less overpacked, sat, and she pulled it up onto her back. Unfortunately, it was then Felix noticed a male looking over in their direction and narrowed her eyes. Compared to these people, her silver armor and brown leathered armguards stick out. Especially outside a forest. It would seem we have been noticed. Matabi nodded, then gestured the two civilians to follow as she informed. "We don't need to fight, but escape. We need to head east. My older brother will protect us." "Is that the Kyuubi?" Tuchi muttered breathlessly in awe, watching the nine tails breath flames over a different district of the village and setting it ablaze. Rolling her eyes, Matabi snipped, "Unfortunately. I heard that," Kurama bellowed, staring at his stupid little sister from across the battleground. The two-tailed cat stuck her tongue out and he narrowed his eyes on her, despite the earth around his feet jumping up to meet his face. It was blown apart by a silver white-furred eight-tailed vixen that continued running and unleashing foxfire. "Amazing," Ayame whispered in awe, but she jolted at the sound of bowstrings snapping, and one look shows Felix drawing back another silver glowing arrow. Another blink shows Matabi breathing dark azure flames at a raised stone wall. A cling snaps the civilians to their back where Jenny and clashed with her large kunai with a chunin, kicked him away and slashed out against a second. Abruptly, Matabi spin kicks a jonin, then lands beside the two Ichiraku family members and ordered, "Head east, Jenny will cover you." She leaps forward toward a Kumogakure jonin, who was already going through hand signs, but was intercepted by a leaf chunin. Tuchi grabs his daughter's arm and began to run down the road towards the east, just as Jenny arrived at their back, switching back to her bow and firing off an arrow at a rooftop 4 shops down, only for the chunin to duck it and throw kunai back. With the speed granted to her by her goddess's blessing, Jenny leapt ahead of the two civilians, drew her hunting blades and deftly deflected the 4 kunai. The sound of whizzing, the air cracked, when suddenly flying above the three came an azure flame ball that split into a dozen more and blanketed the area the chunin was in. Yet from the dust and smoke, came the same chunin and 2 others, landing along the road ahead of the trio. Their leader wore a gray and black zip-up jacket beneath a green chunin vest, dark gray trousers with bandages around his arms, a staff in his right hand. At his side, a kunoichi with large orange pigtails with red elastics, green chunin vest, black bodysuit, and armored arm and shin guards. Opposite the kunoichi, another chunin, brown hair, circular glasses and kunai in both hands, having been the one who originally thrown the kunai. He too was wearing a green chunin vest and black bodysuit. Jenny pulled out her bow once more, pulling back and forming a silver arrow as she was ready to strike, when Ayame stepped up and called, "Konohamaru, Moegi, Udon." "Stop." The three chunin glanced from Jenny to the civilian. Konohamaru questioned. Ayame, nay, who is this? A friend of Naruto's. I am a maiden of thy lady. Jenny cut Ayame off sharply, eyes narrowed and glowing a soft silver, loaded with power. In her name, I shall protect. Abruptly, a large crash and the three shinobi leapt clear as the red scales of Diedrich shattered through the nearby buildings. Naruto called out, "Ayame, nay." He dropped down immediately and Ayame's eyes glisten as she runs forward and the two embrace. He heard her sobs, the clenched and trembling fingers digging into his jacket. Being gentle, Naruto ran his fingers through her hair and patted her head while whispering sweet words to try calm the clearly hysterical woman he has claimed as his older sister. She must have been so worried about him. By the log, he never had any intention of being the cause of any of this. Movement drew his gaze up to the other man present, his expression softened further than Jenny had ever seen before. Naruto spoke with a tight voice. "Tuchi Oji. Been a while, nay?" Wiping his eyes, Tuchi nodded and replied, "Yeah, kiddo. Glad you're still as strong as ever." "Partner." D-Drake cut in, drawing Naruto's attention swiftly towards the dragon, then onto what he was staring at, and his breath caught. Stepping out from the ruined buildings, carefully and with arms up, were three very familiar chunin. "Boss, that you?" Konohamaru inquired hesitantly, causing the dragon to look back to the blonde. Naruto smirked, then offered, "Kono, Udon, Moegi. It's been a while, huh?" All three nodded rapidly, tears in their eyes. A sudden and very violent crash, then earthquake rocked their position, and back in the direction of the ramen shop an explosion of blue flames reached up to lick the sky. Snapping out of the melancholy, Naruto ordered sharply, "Time to go." He looked to the Konohamaru Corps and asked, "You coming or staying?" "We're with you, boss," Konohamaru declared without hesitation, yanking off his hidden leaf headband immediately. Udon and Moegi the next moment. Nodding, Naruto looked back to Jenny and questioned, "Where's Felix?" "She stayed back with," Jenny began until there was a feline growl, drawing all eyes up to see the Jaguar ESC Matabi landing on the roof above them, a slightly roughed-up Felix hopping down from her back. Smirking, Naruto remarked, "Fashionable entrance there, Mata? Trying to one-up Kurama or something?" Hopping down and reverting to a human form, Matabi snipped, "I have no idea what you're." Another loud, air-ripping boom cut her off and all eyes snapped upwards to see yet another meteor, a moon fragment tearing through the sky and exploding in a shower overhead, raining down on the planet. Clearing her throat and gaining attention, Felix calmly offered, "Perhaps the banter can wait until we return?" "Agreed," Naruto replied without hesitation, then looked back to the dragon and offered, "Go play with the airships. I'll get these guys back to the temple." With a grin, Diedrich spread his wings and blasted off into the chaotic skies, then darted directly toward the three remaining airships the Governor-General was struggling with. Naruto looked over the gathered crowd, Ayame still in his arms against his chest, and calmed down lightly. After a few moments, he nodded to himself before he announced, "Everyone, get close and grab hold of me." Blinking, Jenny and Felix glanced to each other while the locals did so without any hesitation. With a twitching eyebrow, Naruto snipped, "Fine. Grab Ayame instead." Both hunters did so and held onto Ayame's backpack moments before someone else called out, "Naruto." Ayame felt Naruto flinch hard at the voice and drew her attention back in the direction of the voice. It was a woman, light blonde hair down to her waist and tied at the end with a bow. She was wearing a yellow jacket, a size or two, maybe Naruto sized, too big, tight blue pants and sandals. She was pretty, especially with those pale lavender eyes. Matabi growled low but fell silent and just glared after Naruto raised a hand. Then he asked in a formal, polite, and perfectly cold tone. "Lady Priestess, I did not expect to see, or hear, from you again after our last encounter." Even Ayame, a civilian, saw the woman flinch as if stricken, almost stumble mid-step, but nothing more. After all, Naruto never ever uses formalities like that. She would know as childhood friends. Bowing profusely upon reaching them, Shion explained. I came because I needed to be honest with you." A breath, before she finished, rather weakly, "and myself." "You made your stance perfectly clear, Lady Priestess," Naruto informed flatly, formally, though his cold blue eyes had remained perfectly level. None knew what he was feeling or thinking. Undeterred, Shion continued meticulously. "I am aware of that folly. That will remain my greatest shame. Thus my presence here is in direct opposition of that stance." Not being interrupted, she informed. "I, however, have been watching and I need to ask you something critical. Your answer will ripple far and wide, touch more lives than either of us will ever know." Narrowing his eyes, Naruto inquired. "What did you see, exactly?" This it for today guys. This was the part 16 of What If Naruto Was the Jinchuuriki of 9 Bijuu X Highschool DxD. Stay tuned for more.